Good morning, and we'll call to order the meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada. Ms. Maynard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Commission, your first item is to conduct your first citizens' participation.
This is the first time set aside for public comment. Those wishing to speak to the Commission on a posted agenda item, now is your opportunity. State your name for the record and what item you'd like to speak on. Alita Dupree, items 42, 43. Good morning.
Thank you, Chair Brown. Members, Alita Dupree for the record. As I've stated on the card, I'm going to talk to you briefly about 42 and 43, which both involve vehicle procurement. So I am in support of, in 43, of buying 20 more of these natural gas buses. I am experiencing the benefits of a newer fleet that runs on natural gas, especially those blue seats that we have on board, the easier to clean and keep up with. I go back to 42 here, we'll see an amendment, 1928, and it has to do with some language involving the procurement of vehicles, and I saw and spoke on this at the Executive Advisory Committee meeting. The language cleans up, taking CNG out of the sentence for vehicle acquisition. This will be a good thing for us if we're going to go electric, but I don't want it to be a loophole that will allow us to go back to buying diesel, because someday we're going to have to acquire new vehicles for the strip, and we are running double-deckers, and the double-deckers don't have a natural gas option. We have to remember that whenever we buy a new vehicle and we have federal money expended for it, that we are stuck with that vehicle for 12 years or 500,000 miles, whichever comes first. So we're going to have to think hard about what we're going to buy for the strip. But if we're not ready for electric, we may have to hold off on buying double-deckers and buy some more of these good 60-foot natural gas buses. So keep these things in mind when you continue to order buses. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board? Seeing and hearing no one, we'll close this portion of public comment.
All right. Mr.
Hold
Chairman.
on. MJ, hold
Excuse
on.
me.
Do you want to speak on an item? If not, there'll be a second time set aside for public comment. Is that okay? Thank you, sir. We'll close this portion of public comment.
Mr. Chairman, the next order of business is to approve the agenda, and the agenda is in order and ready for your approval.
Motion on the floor for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And the next item is the CEO report. But before I begin the CEO report, I want to take a moment to address the assault that occurred on our bus operated by MV Transportation on December 13th. The assault involved a veteran senior citizen who lost his eye in the incident. While acts of violence are rare in our system, any act of violence is one too many. Just so you know, we are working with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and our contractors to help locate the suspect in this case. We and our contractors remain committed to providing a safe transit service to our community, which is very timely, as later in this presentation, Deputy CEO Francis Julian will speak to agenda item 45 that seeks board approval for a new security contractor. So the first item of today's CEO report is an officer recognition from Allied Universal, Jesus Ramirez, if he's here. Several weeks ago, the Metropolitan Police Department called the Bonneville Transit Center and informed RTC security staff about a juvenile runaway who could be in the downtown area. While patrolling the facility, Officer Ramirez recognized the juvenile and kept her safe while waiting for Metro to arrive. Metro positively identified the individual as the missing person, and she was reunited with her family. Thank you, Officer Ramirez. Your kindness and your diligence protected a vulnerable young person.
Thank you, sir. Congratulations. Thank you, sir. to speak. Good morning.
There's a warranty on this. It's 500,000 miles.
Love for you to say a few.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. Well,
Hold it up.
the only thing that I can say is that I'm happy that I was able to locate that child. She was only very young, though, 15 years old. And I'll be more than happy to do it again. You have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
We'd like to also recognize a supervisor from our contractor MV, Victoria Kish Spence. Ms. Kish Spence played a pivotal role in helping a paratransit customer in need of medical assistance. A certified CPR trainer, Ms. Kish Spence called 911, but also assisted the passenger while waiting for emergency responders. Medics later said it was her quick thinking that helped save the passenger's life. We thank you for your brave actions. Please join me in recognizing Victoria Kish Spence.
Thank you very much. I'm honored and I'm happy to be a part of MV in the transportation, and I'm there for the safety of the clients, and I just adore my job. I adore the clients, and anything to keep them safe, I'm there. Thank you. Thank you.
We're done. Yeah, we're done. This past Monday, we hosted the GoEnvy Summit for the second time as a lead-in to the Consumer Electronics Show. The summit featured the transformative work happening across the country and around the world to further the development of smart city and advanced technology. The GoEnvy Summit brought together leading companies and government officials to discuss how communities can plan, adapt, and move forward as transportation technology continues to rapidly evolve. Attendees heard from U.S. Department of Transportation, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Transportation Policy, Finch Fulton, who spoke about the priorities and policies of the federal government regarding advanced transportation technology, including the ongoing effort to create safety regulations for autonomous vehicles. Jane Williams, Acting Administrator for the Federal Transit Administration, also spoke about leveraging innovation to meet the shift in demand for a more seamless, multimodal transportation through integrated fare payment systems and new technologies that promote transit as a piece of the overall mobility puzzle. Immediately after the summit at the GoEnvy Tech Showcase, event attendees got a hands-on experience with groundbreaking mobility technologies, including autonomous and connected vehicles that operate on land and in the air. Folks from the public sector, the private sector, everybody in this room today is excited about learning what is on the horizon.
I'm so excited that RTC and many of its partners are working together with this GoEnvy conference that leads into CES. They're talking about best practices, high technology, the interconnectability of modes of transportation, providing access to all users.
We don't have boundaries in our city lines. We have to be working together to find solutions that help our sister cities and the communities around us and frankly the entire state. So it's very important for us to be working together.
The public only accepted 2 pilots in the cockpit with their safety flying, cross country. When you take those 2 pilots out, that's an absolute psychological paradigm shift that has to occur. So what that means is we have to ramp up our public education aspect to get the public to accept that
public-private partnerships, the RTC working with private entities on what they're working on, what their designs are, what their ideas are, is critically important for keeping our community at the cutting edge of what's happening in transportation.
We wanted to start thinking about the digital infrastructure of the future and how we were going to manage in a world where the private sector in particular was beginning to, through their own very sophisticated use of data, frankly take over the operation of our streets.
By having this event, our Go Nevada event, we get to meet and talk with people and talk about issues that are relevant to Southern Nevada, specifically to us, to figure out what can we be doing to stay ahead, to lead, to be risk takers, to be adventurers in the world of transportation, mobility, and technology.
It was a great event. Thank you. Some of the commissioners were able to attend, and I want to say again, NDOT was Christina Swallow, Director Swallow, and they great sponsors, so appreciate your support. Okay. GoEnvy also served as the stage for the announcement of the RTC's partnership with Uber and Transit, whose customers can now purchase RTC passes within 2 of the world's most popular transportation-related apps, in addition to Ride RTC. The ability to buy transit passes on any of the 3 apps makes it easier for our residents and our visitors to plan a cost-effective and time-efficient commute via transit and rideshare services. These partnerships exemplify one of our agency's initiatives in which the RTC pursues collaborative efforts to help current and potentially new customers use public transit as a viable means of transportation. As Southern Nevada attracts more and more residents and visitors and transportation options increase, we must find ways to incorporate journey planning and fare payment into well-known options like Uber and Transit. David Swallow, RTC's Deputy CEO, will provide you with an update on the progress of our motor vehicle fuel tax, Q10, and fuel revenue indexing program, including the initial 3-year FRI funding, the 10-year extension, and the state FRI.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the Commission. So in response to a request in previous months to add more detail about where we are with FRI and frankly all the investments that we're making in transportation, we've spruced up our report to give you an overall outlook of since 2014 when fuel revenue indexing was enacted and we started receiving revenue from that, the number of projects that have been completed or are otherwise in design and construction. You can see here we did an immediate ramp up and went forward with that to now in 2019 to date we have 458 projects that were either underway or completed. Of that, 235 have been completed. And for perspective, when we initiated fuel revenue indexing, it was a 3-year pilot. And after that 3 years, as part of that pilot, we were going to deliver 225 projects. This is where the 225 project line is represented on the graph, and you can see we've gone well beyond that with the 10-year extension of fuel revenue indexing and continuing to deliver projects to our community. If you look at the amount of dollars that are under contract between the RTC and the local jurisdictions, you can see here, this includes all of our funds, including the motor vehicle fuel tax, the Question 10 or Q10 sales tax revenues, as well as the local FRI, the fuel revenue indexing amounts that come to RTC directly, and then those fuel revenue indexing funds that go to the state DOT. And to date, we've awarded over $1 billion in contracts to the local jurisdictions to deliver these projects. Here you can see just a summary of the revenues that have come in. We've had over $1.1 billion in revenues. Again, this is for all the funding. Note that prior to 2018, we don't have as much detail on the motor vehicle fuel tax and Q10 projects as they were completed prior to that, and we were just closing them out as we got into 2017. But you can see over 1.1 billion available in revenue and awarded nearly that amount to the local jurisdictions to deliver projects. And to date, we have about $750 million in expenditures towards those. And then for our quarterly report, as of December 31st, 2019, to date, we've awarded 338 projects. This is just for fuel revenue indexing funds, which have included 78 local small businesses that have been involved in these projects, in total of $954 million in contracts awarded, and over 10,000 direct, indirect, or induced jobs that are related to fuel revenue indexing. With that concludes the fuel revenue indexing report.
Next, Deputy CEO Francis Julian will provide an update on the Trip-to-Strip pilot.
Good morning, Chairman Brown and members of the board. I would like to provide you with an update on our MicroTransit on-demand pilot program, Trip-to-Strip. As you know, we surveyed our riders at least twice a year to understand our service and the performance in the general market and the resort corridor. Based on the feedback that we received from our customers, 82% of those surveyed on the Las Vegas Strip said that they would like to try someday an on-demand service offered by the RTC. With declining ridership and revenue in the area, we opted to test a pilot program to see if we could regain some of that base. When we launched Trip-to-Strip 6 months ago, the service area was introduced in phases. It started with the Las Vegas Strip and McCarran International Airport, and then expanded north to downtown Las Vegas and as far south as to the M Resort. Other noteworthy locations included UNLV and Thomas & Mack, Rio All-Suite Hotels and Casino, Palms Casino, Palace Station Hotel and Casino, South Point Hotel, Casinos and Spas, and the Gold Coast Hotel and Casino. Now that we have 8 months into the program, I'm pleased to say that this was one of the most successful MicroTransit pilot projects in the nation. We've seen consistent ridership growth each month and more than 65,000 passengers over the 6-month test period. From May 1st to December 30th, the total ridership, as I mentioned, was 65,000 people. The group size were on average 3.1 passenger per trip. The average wait time for the consumers were 7 minutes. The average mile travel were 4.6 miles, and the best of all was that the app rating was 4.93 stars out of 5. However, the standard for new public transit service is to reach peak ridership within 3 years. Unfortunately, due to the financial constraint facing our overall transit system, we currently do not have the luxury of time to allow the new service to reach its full potential and decided to discontinue funding to Trip-to-Strip effective December 31st, 2019. The total cost of the pilot program was $2.9 million, and during our 8 months in operation, we generated $300,000 in revenue. This has been an important pilot for public transportation that provided great insight for future transit programs. We learned very valuable lessons along the way that we can take with us moving forward, including consumers will use on-demand transit, MicroTransit service as a viable transit option. The RTC has determined that MicroTransit technology is here and it works. It can be used in other areas that may not have access to transit yet. A rating of 4.9 stars out of 5 with 33% of rider rating the service is outstanding in our industry. Customer input is key. As a result, the RTC quickly implemented an end-of-ride survey to determine if where people were finding out about our service. Marketing a brand new transportation option within the tourist-based resort corridor requires a long-term marketing commitment to build a brand awareness, since potential customers are only in town 3 days at a time on average. There is definite interest from properties and businesses who are farther from the Strip and downtown to partner with us on this type of services. And the most successful pickups and drop-off locations are the properties where the stops were nearest to the rider's destination. Customers really want the door-to-door service. Top destinations were McCarran International Airport, the Bellagio Hotel and Casino, and the Venetian. The top origins were the South Point Hotel, Casinos and Spa, the Grand View at the Las Vegas Resort, and Circus. The airport ridership accounted for 26% of all the total ride. Partnerships are crucial. The RTC has learned the value of establishing partnership with resort corridor properties and other businesses in the service area prior to the launch. With an on-demand service, we have the flexibility to tailor the service area and the operating cost to demand, unlike on our fixed route services where operational costs cannot be adjusted. MicroTransit could also be a more cost-effective option compared to a new transit route. The MicroTransit service is flexible and adaptable because it doesn't rely on fixed schedule. As I mentioned, here are the top locations. So the top 5 origin locations were South Point, McCarran, the Grandview, Planet Hollywood, and Hilton Grand Resort. And the top 5 destinations were, once again, McCarran, the Grandview, South Point, and the Bellagio. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes, thank you. You know, during the GoEnvy conference, we heard from some of our federal partners, folks from Federal Transit and from Transportation, and they talked about how important these pilot programs are because it's an opportunity to test something in a smaller scale and then either find out that it works or find out that it's not going to work. But I do believe in the future, microtransit's going to be a big part of our transportation solution for the valley.
Mary, you're exactly right. We actually spent 3 days with Administrator Jane Williams. Had the privilege to have, she came to the RTC, she learned about our system, and she was very adamant that transit agencies around the United States need to take time and invest in pilots. The only way that we can learn as a business, as a transportation business, is understand what the future looks like and what new mobility options could potentially be part of that transportation landscape. So she was very excited that we undertook this process, but she also understood why we decided to end the pilot. You know, we've had and continue to have a decrease in ridership and revenue in the resort corridor. Has impacted our financial landscape for transportation. And you know, the decision to do this pilot was, do we sit back and continue to watch the revenue and the ridership decline, or do we look for an option that we heard customers want? So it was a success, but right now financially, we'll put it on the shelf, and it's something that I think will be part of the onboard plan that you'll hear about later.
Mayor Goodman.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Julian. Question I have, I don't know whether it's a federal cost restriction or not, but as the town continues to grow and the service stays on the plate for evaluation, if I choose, and we have had announced that Summerlin West, which is going to have about 17,000 new residences, way west, if I choose to move there, I make the choice to move out of the district that's served. Does the federal government prohibit the RTC and public service transit from being flexible with prices? Since I have chosen to move there, I wouldn't mind spending more for this service, or is that not possible?
No, with the federal regulations, on public transit, we need to have a consistent price throughout the system.
So even any cost on my part, or even the Southwest, Henderson, as we get bigger and further out there beyond our service area, you have no flexibility for me, who wants to spend extra for the service.
Francis is correct in that public transit, and we provide complimentary ADA service. So all of that the pricing is determined. Paratransit pricing is determined by how much we charge on fixed routes. So there is a formula there. If we, as an agency, decided to offer service that was a premium service, it didn't look anything like paratransit. It was, we decided to do it 3 days a week, 2 hours a day. We certainly have the flexibility there to charge a premium price.
And at what determination? At cost to the entity or at cost to the customer? How is that figured out?
We have the flexibility to determine, again, if it is a specialized service that And this is normally for, you would find service, for example, outside of a paratransit service area or a fixed route service area. There's flexibility as long as it doesn't, it's not complementary ADA. It's very specialized. Different days, limited hours. There's flexibility in terms of pricing for the customer, what you would charge the customer.
And you have that ability.
We do.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, this concludes your CEO report. And the next item on the agenda is to receive the Nevada Department of Transportation Director's Report from Director Christina Swallow.
Good morning. As I have done every time since I started showing up here, or since I've been here, I am going to start with a fatalities report. These are preliminary numbers. The official numbers for December and the year are not going to be available till tomorrow, but these are the preliminary numbers. As you can see, we are closing out the year with significantly fewer fatalities than the previous year. That's the 284 is a 15% decrease from 2018. That is still 284 lives too many to lose on our roads. And unfortunately, while those numbers are significantly lower than the previous year, we did see December was a tough month. December was a tough month. There were 7 fatalities, pedestrian fatalities in Clark County alone. That doesn't include the other vehicular crashes and fatalities that we saw. 3 of those pedestrian fatalities were struck by hit and run drivers. One of our challenges, and you've heard me say this many times, is that it's on us as drivers to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do. As much as it is on the pedestrians, everyone who uses the system, we need to be thinking about our own role and how we make sure that we're using it safely. To that end, we are thankful to our partners in safety and the local police agencies for focusing on pedestrian safety efforts, including running a campaign, Santa in a Crosswalk program, to highlight the fact that there are pedestrians in crosswalks and we need to be paying attention to them. I've also been enjoying seeing some of the posts that Metro and NHP have been posting when they catch drivers operating their vehicles at excessive speed, operating them impaired. There was particularly one cute one where they had pulled over an impaired driver, and the free RTC bus on New Year's Day was right behind their stop. So they are doing their best to also help make our network safe. Unfortunately, also the wrong way crashes have continued and the fatalities associated therewith. As I mentioned a couple months ago, we are testing a wrong way driver system. One of those locations is in the valley here. It will be installed. It's currently being installed at US 95 on-ramp at Durango Drive in the Northwest Valley. Unfortunately, this is a new system, so it hasn't been federally approved yet, fully approved via federal highways. They have given us conditional and provisional approval to implement the system and monitor it. We're hoping that we'll see positive benefits from it and be able to do them more broadly. So this particular system uses cameras and sensors to detect vehicles entering in the wrong direction. The system then alerts the drivers with 2 sets of strobe-like flashing lights. The first set of lights is actually even lower to make sure that we're reaching sleepy or otherwise impaired drivers whose vision may not be up at the traditional level that we're used to when we're driving unimpaired. We're hoping that that will start to show some significant benefits and we'll be able to get federal highways approval to do broader application of that. And all of our construction efforts right now, where we are looking at ramps, we are prepping them and building the facilities so that once we get final approval, which could still take some time, we'll be able to immediately upgrade those facilities. So with that, I am now going to turn over the mic to provide a report on HOV lanes. As I promised earlier last year, as we deployed the lanes, we will be providing periodic updates to them on their system performance. I am appreciative of Councilman Anthony letting us know what his particular questions are, and we have added those into our presentation to make sure that we address those. At the dais with me today is Jeff LaRude. He is a professional engineer with the department. He has been with us for nearly 25 years, of which 10 of those were spent in traffic operations. So he fully understands the way the system performs and how it should perform and how we should measure it. The most recent 10 years have been spent in project management, where, among other things, he has been leading our HOV effort and our HOV studies and overall HOV long-range management plan. So with that, Jeff, I'll turn it over to you so you can provide us the update.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Brown, Board of the Commission. Today I'm here to provide information requested at the last RTC board meeting regarding the high occupancy vehicle lanes, HOV lanes. So like Christina was saying, I've been with the department for about 25 years now, 5 years in roadway design, 10 years in traffic operations, and the last 10 years in project management. During my time at the department, I've been involved very heavily with the HOV system. In 2007, I was actually a member of traffic operations when the original HOV plan was developed. I was on the technical advisory team on that endeavor. And then in 2015, when we updated the HOV plan, I was actually the project manager leading the team along with the consultant. And I was also on the 2018 HOV addendum that revisited the HOV drop ramp locations. So a little fun fact too, I was also I was part of the first ramp meters in Las Vegas and developing the ramp meter manual that the department uses today. So the presentation that I'm about to give you today is very similar to the presentation that Christina gave to the State Transportation Board meeting last month. So the way I have the presentation set up, first I will address the questions that were brought up at the last RTC meeting, or RTC board meeting. Then I'll provide you a timeline of some of the HOV milestones that we've seen over the years, report on the HOV system performance, and then talk about HOV lanes moving forward. So first of all, please note that these questions are numbered according to the way I received them from the last board meeting minutes. So they, out of context, they probably don't look right because, for example, here I'm going to answer questions 1 and 3 because they're very closely related. So question 1 was, who and under what authority created the HOV lanes? And question 3, who and under what authority decided to make them 24/7 instead of restricting the morning and restricting the afternoon? So under NRS, general supervision of the highways is given to the Department of Transportation. The NRS also gives the authority of the Department of Transportation to designate carpool lanes, specifically hours of operation and occupants in the vehicle, number of occupants in the vehicle. I'd like to point out, though, that although the NRS specifically states that the Department of Transportation, namely the director, has the authority over the HOV system, this is not an authority that's taken lightly. We do this in conjunction with our federal partners that have the approval of environmental documents and interstate change of control of access on our interstates and U.S. routes. So although the authority to designate the HOV lanes by statute is with the department and not with the cities or the county or the RTC, all of the local agencies are very critical, important partners in developing and delivering a successful HOV system. So question number 2, are they required under federal law regulation, under state law regulation, or a lawsuit that has been filed? Specifically, are they required under the federal grant to build highways in southern Nevada? So regarding the state and federal regulations, there are no state or federal regulations requiring the operation of the HOV system, except other than the NRS enabling the Department of Transportation to have the authority. Regarding the filed lawsuit, this question is regards to the lawsuit of the Sierra Club back in the early 2000s. This lawsuit came about because the Sierra Club was not satisfied with the record of decision for the widening of the US 95 environmental document, which I would like to point out included HOV lanes already. The Sierra Club wanted air quality mitigation above and beyond the HOV lanes. So as part of the settlement, the department agreed to monitor and mitigate MSAT levels at 3 schools along the US 95 corridor. To reiterate, the HOV lanes were not part of the settlement with the Sierra Club. They were already in the record of decision. So regarding the funding, the Elkhorn ramps that just opened up, I think it was July of last year, it's actually on my timeline, they were built with CMAQ fundings. Now the RTC is very familiar with CMAQ fundings, congestion mitigation and air quality funding. And so that was used to build the ramps at Elkhorn, and they served the park and ride out there at Centennial Hills. Regarding Project Neon funding, Specifically, Project Neon did not have any federal funding. However, when there are projects on the interstate, the FHWA has full oversight and approval of environmental documents and interstate change and control of access reports or requests. And as part of Project Neon, an HOV-only interchange was constructed between Charleston and Sahara. This interchange violates the traditional spacing requirements required by FHWA, but since it's an HOV-only facility, FHWA accepted the request for control of access, and we were able to construct this HOV-only interchange. So question number 4. There is a study being done of the HOV lanes. Who's doing the study? What is the methodology? What exactly are they studying? How long will it take? And can the study result in the elimination of HOV lanes? So currently there's not an HOV study being performed per se. However, the department is closely monitoring the HOV system. We're partnering with the RTC FAST and accumulating data such as overall volumes, lane by lane volumes, and then speed volumes as well. I've got more on this later in the presentation that I'll talk about, but that's kind of what we're looking at right now. As far as the occupancy study is concerned, this topic I'm also going to talk about in the HOV moving forward, but essentially the department is researching how to do an occupancy study in order to determine how many occupants are in vehicles as they're traveling our HOV lanes and even the general purpose lanes. So the last one about the elimination of HOV lanes, understanding that there are those that would like to eliminate the HOV lanes. Please recognize for something like the elimination of the HOV lanes, it's nothing that can take place overnight. We would have to, ranging from revisiting all the environmental documents that have listed HOV lanes as part of the document, satisfying FHWA, to extensive public outreach and stakeholder outreach to participants that the actual changes are coming. Also, it would require possibly infrastructure changes, signing, striping, things like that. And then even our new active traffic management system that's going in with Project Neon, that's got components to it that monitors the HOV system too. So that would have to be changed too. So it would be a very extensive, costly effort if something like that were to happen. Question 5, does the RTC have any authority over the HOV lanes? As I pointed out on my first response to questions 1 and 3, the authority lies with the department. Again, though, that this is not taken lightly, and it's one of the reasons I'm here today to share with you this information about HOV lanes. And please note that the RTC is a very critical partner with the department in delivering the HOV program. In fact, with your lead in the Club Ride program, this helps reduce congestion and improve air quality. We'll be able to evaluate the usage of the data that's collected in the Club Ride program and get a better understanding of commuter trends and how it relates to our HOV system. Question number 6. Drivers are sometimes concerned when they have entered an HOV lane and do not know where they can legally exit. They have to cross a double solid line to get to their exit. Can this be addressed? So having 10 years of experience in traffic operations, the freeway operations I'm very passionate about. It's very near and dear to my heart. In fact, I don't know if the commute has impacted anybody as much as it has impacted me. For example, I get on I-15 at St. Rose Parkway. I travel through the resort corridor and I get off at Charleston. I come to work over here at the RTC building. So I totally get the congestion. I totally get the HOV lanes. So when I'm driving down the road, I'm looking at the HOV lanes and wondering, how can we make it better? How can we optimize the system? Is the striping right? Are the signs conveying the right kind of messages? Are the access points in the right location? So I've actually got some really good news about that I'll share a little bit later in the presentation when I get into the HOV moving forward. So that pretty much covers the majority of the questions, other than the ones that I've deferred to later on in the presentation. And now I'm going to talk about our HOV history. So this started decades ago with a major investment study that led to the decision to have HOV lanes on US 95 to address capacity needs for our growing community. That led to the NEPA document for the widening of US 95 in the early 2000s. So it's important to note that with each major milestone, the department did extensive outreach and stakeholder outreach to the cities, the county, the RTC, as well as stakeholders like the LVCVA and the Resort Corridor Association. So in January of 2000, FHWA signed the Record of Decision for US 95, which included HOV lanes. In June of 2005, the Sierra Club settlement came as a result of that NEPA document, which I talked about a little bit earlier, for the widening of US 95. And as part of the settlement, the department had to implement measures in the US 95 corridor to help mitigate air quality issues adjacent to the schools along the freeway corridor. In June of 2007, the department completed the first Southern Nevada HOV plan. And like I said earlier, I was part of the technical advisory committee on that. In 2007, we completed the US 95 widening from the Spaghetti Bowl to the Rainbow Curve. This opened up the first HOV lanes on 95, about 5 miles in length. So in October of 2010, the department received a Record of Decision from FHWA for Project Neon. In July of 2012, the Direct Connect HOV connector to Summerlin Parkway was constructed from US 95 to Summerlin. In 2013, the US 95 widening was completed from the Rainbow Curve out to Ann Road. This extended the HOV network to about 12 miles. And then in July of 2015, the Southern Nevada HOV plan update was completed. This is the one that I actually manage as a project manager, and some of the important results out of this came recommendations for operations of a 24/7 system and limited access system. In May of 2016, Project Neon received an approved change in control of access, which included that HOV only interchange at the Neon Gateway. In October of 2018, the department completed the Southern Nevada Plan addendum, which addressed HOV direct connect locations and either eliminated them, moved them, or validated that they should be moved forward. In May of 2019, Project Neon opened, and the US 95 connection was complete from I-15 to 95, completing our HOV network of 22 continuous miles of HOV. In July of 2019, the Elkhorn ramps were opened up, and they serve, like I was saying earlier, the Centennial Park and Ride out there in the Northwest. And then pending right now is a project that I'm actually managing, is the reconstruction of the Tropicana interchange at I-15 and construction of HOV drop ramps at Harmon Avenue. Now, we're currently in the environmental review process, and I just got word that we should be getting a finding of no significant impact, or FONSI, this month or early next month. We're shooting for this month. So that completes my discussion of the HOV kind of milestone timeline. Now I'm going to go into more of the specifics about some of the metrics that we've seen out there. So why 24/7? First of all, Las Vegas is a 24-hour city, and the traffic counts show it. As you can see in this slide, these are 24-hour counts taken in October, just a few months ago, near Sahara at I-15. They're in the northbound direction, and the blue bars represent weekday traffic volumes, and the orange bars represent weekend traffic volumes. In most cities, typically there's a significant AM peak and a significant PM peak with a big dip in the middle. But as you can see here, once the commute starts, we maintain significant volumes throughout the day, and the volumes really don't dip down to pre-commute volumes until around midnight. Between midnight and about 5 a.m., the volumes are so low that they can be comfortably conveyed in 2 lanes of traffic. The typical lane capacity is between 1,800 and 2,000 cars per lane per mile, or excuse me, per hour per lane. And out in this section, we actually have 5 lanes. So with this excess capacity, unfortunately, especially in the overnight hours, it leads to some unsafe driving practices like speeding, aggressive driving, high speed weaving. And when we have crashes at higher speeds, the severity of the crashes go up. In fact, over the last 5 years, nearly 60% of all fatalities on the roadway happen at night in Nevada. So that's a really shocking stat. So maintaining the HOV lanes enables us to provide a path for emergency vehicles to quickly respond to a crash and get those in need of emergency care faster. And the sooner the road can be cleared, secondary crashes can be avoided, and the road can be clear for all drivers. For every 1 minute of congestion, or for every 1 minute that the system is down, we have 4 minutes of congestion. I'd also like to point out too, when we get our active traffic management system up and running, the RTC FAST will actually be able to dynamically divert traffic into the HOV lanes on I-15 to get around incidents or debris or anything downstream. So that'll be a really good tool that they'll have in their toolbox. So HOV monitoring, overall system performance. So like I said, the department is committed to monitoring the system, and we're working with the RTC FAST on collecting and studying the data. And this is some of the data that we're looking at: volumes, overall volumes, and lane-by-lane volumes, lane speeds, comparing the HOV lane speeds to the general purpose lane speeds, crash data, travel time reliability, and club ride data. And so like I said earlier, the RTC is a very important partner of ours, and then they can help promote ride sharing, carpooling, as well as transit use. And we can use the club ride data to get an understanding of commuter trends and how it relates to our HOV system. So how is the system performing? The full HOV system has been open since about May now, so about a little over 7 months. This slide shows a snapshot of northbound US 95 on near Jones Boulevard for the years 2016 and 2019. The blue bars are general purpose volumes per lane, and the orange bars are HOV traffic volumes per lane. So the volumes are being compared on a per lane basis, so you can see what the comparison is for an HOV lane versus a general purpose lane. As you can see from the graph, the HOV usage is tracking well with the general purpose lane usage, right around 50% or higher, especially in the high peak times. When the volumes are low, however, the HOV lane usage it also reduces, because there's really not a benefit for somebody to get out of the general purpose lane if they're cruising along at 65 miles an hour to get over to the HOV lane. There's just no reason for them to do that. So that's why the HOV lanes volumes actually go down in those off-peak hours. One other thing I'd like to point out is that we're seeing an increase in both the general traffic volumes and the HOV volumes from 2016 to 2019. So this slide right here, it's a similar snapshot of in the southbound direction of US 95 near Jones for 2016 and 2019. Again, the blue bars are general purpose lane volumes, and the orange bars are HOV volumes. The HOV volumes are not tracking as well in this direction for some reason, and it kind of made us scratch our heads. So we're going to keep on monitoring this. Like I said, this is a snapshot, so I don't know if there's any errors with this or not, but we're going to keep on looking at it and see if we can figure out what's going on here. But as you can see, there's also an increase in general purpose traffic and HOV traffic in the southbound direction too. Oh, one thing I wanted to point out as well is we have seen a speed benefit from the HOV lanes as high as 8 miles an hour higher in the HOV lane as compared to the general purpose lanes. So moving over to I-15, these pictures were taken in northbound and the southbound direction near Desert Inn. You can actually see the active traffic management system downstream in the photo, showing some displays to the motoring public about HOV lane use. Unfortunately, count data similar to US 95 is not currently available because the active traffic management system that was installed during Project Neon is still going through its testing phases. It's currently, once it is up and operational, we'll be able to collect the data and report the I-15 count data in future reports. But I'll talk more about the status of the ATM system in upcoming slides. For now, though, there has been some spot counts performed on the HOV lanes in this section, and we're seeing volumes ranging from 620 HOV vehicles per hour upwards to nearly 1,800 vehicles per hour. So that's a really good sign, good lane usage for the HOV lanes.
Jeff, if I may, when you talk about the volumes in the HOV, are those the vehicle, or are those vehicles that have 2 passengers?
They are, in theory, a vehicle that has 2 passengers. So it's a high occupancy vehicle.
But it's simply registering that vehicle in the HOV lane.
Right.
It doesn't distinguish between a solo or a multi.
Right, not at this time. In fact, that's a really good point. We are going to be doing an occupancy study And I'll talk more about that here in a little minute.
Thank you.
So in addition to the overall volumes on I-15, we see an increase of the volumes from 2016 to 2019 at about 15%, and only a decrease in speed of about 1%. So that's showing that the work that we did on Project Neon is really absorbing that higher demand, and the speeds are still going along at a pretty good clip. So HOV moving forward. We're just talking about the active traffic management system. So the active traffic management system is really critical to have in place for full analysis of the HOV system. In addition, it'll give us, or the RTC FAST, a tool in the toolbox where they can actively manage the freeway to move cars into the HOV lane as single occupants to get around incidents or construction downstream or anything like that. We're currently in our 60-day test. It started December of 19, so we're expecting to have that test, if everything goes well, done by February of 2020. In the meantime, we also have the software being tested. That is hopefully going to be done at the end of February, so we should have a fully deployed ATM system March of this year. And when we get that going, it's going to be really exciting. Right now, we just see the messages on the boards and stuff, but it's going to be really a really good tool for FAST to use to manage our system. Oh, as of right now, you may see system or portions of the system roll out, like safety messaging about seat belts or distracted driving, or friendly reminders about HOV lane usage, like in the slide earlier. One thing that I noted yesterday, as a matter of fact, is we were having on one sign it would say, "Don't cross the double solid white line," and then the next sign downstream would say, "Enforce 24/7." And we really wanted to get that on the same messaging board with a 2 display. And we weren't able to do it because we weren't ready yet, but just yesterday I saw the display switching back and forth, so we're making progress. So we're heading towards full deployment, so that's pretty exciting stuff. I-15 and US 95 discrete data points. Like I said earlier, I live here, I work here, I feel that congestion, I drive that congestion, so I'm always looking for ways to improve the system. And we're going to continue to evaluate the system, look into those finer points of why the system's breaking down, where it's breaking down, and what the potential causes are. So as far as the occupancy study that I was just talking about a minute ago, many questions and complaints about the number of people in the cars in the HOV lane have come up. Personally, I didn't realize how many tinted windows we had out there until I do my own little occupancy study when I'm driving along next to them. Everybody's got tinted windows, it's amazing. But NDOT is in the process of developing options on how to do an occupancy study. Options could range from hardware or infrastructure upgrades that might be a little more costly to videoing, which comes with its own set of challenges with privacy and things like that. But we're accumulating all the options right now. We're going to get them in front of Christina, and we're going to come up with a plan on how to do occupancy study into the future. Another thing that we're looking at is this lane balance on southbound I-15 near the Neon Gateway. Currently in the southbound direction, just south of the Spaghetti Bowl, it's a 5-lane section, and we have 3 lanes of general purpose traffic lanes and 2 lanes of HOV. A lot of times we see the HOV lanes with no cars in it, and the 3 general purpose lanes are packed. So what we're doing right now, we've tasked our roadway design team to look into reallocating one of those HOV lanes to the general purpose lanes so we get better lane balance through that section and hopefully clear up some of that mainline traffic so it can move through that section of freeway better. That's more of a longer term project, but we also have a shorter term project coming on that I was alluding to earlier that I'm really excited about. So as I drive the system, like I've said a couple times now, I've been fielding a lot of complaints. One of the complaints that I got was from somebody that said, "Hey, I get on at Flamingo northbound onto I-15 and I cannot access that HOV lane at all. I have to go all the way around, and then when I get to 95, I can't get into Decatur or Jones." And so I really had a hard time believing it, so I went out and drove it myself, and sure enough, you can't access the HOV lanes from Flamingo, Spring Mountain, or even Sahara. So that prompted us to really take a closer look at these access points, and we got together with our traffic operations folks, our roadway design folks, and we're coming up with a plan, and this is what we're looking at right now. We're looking at least 6 locations, maybe 7 locations. I just heard about a new location yesterday that we need to evaluate. But on I-15, the new northbound access will be on either side of the Neon Gateway, which will allow for access from Flamingo, Spring Mountain, and Sahara. That one's going to really help, I think, our lane utilization of the HOV lanes. And then in the southbound direction, we have something similar where if you get in right around Tropicana, you can't exit the system until the very end of the system, and that wasn't the intent. So we're going to put another access point just right around the 215 where I-15 goes over the 215, so you can access Blue Diamond and Silverado Ranch. For US 95, we have a few locations as well. The most critical location is between the Spaghetti Bowl and Rancho. Right now, people coming from the south or the east come underneath the Spaghetti Bowl, and they used to be able to jump in the HOV lane right away. Well, today they can't until they get to Jones or Decatur. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to put an access point in between the Spaghetti Bowl and Rancho to allow those people to get into the lane. Again, I think that's really going to up our HOV lane usage. We're also going to do two other locations out in the northwest near Craig. In the northbound direction, it'll help Cheyenne access the HOV lane, and in the southbound direction will help Ann have better access to the HOV lane. So the plan to get this work done is by district forces. We can get it done faster and cheaper by doing it that way. And so we're working really close with our district folks to get this plan implemented. We're hoping to get it out in the next 6-7 months. And one of the nice things is we were already collecting a lot of data. We're already monitoring it really well. So when we get these new locations in place, we'll be able to compare the data and really come back and report to you that we're really making strides in improving our HOV system. So hopefully the data will support that. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Christina.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jeff. I just want to reiterate what Jeff said. We are monitoring the system. We are committed to monitoring the system, and we're committed to improving the system. So we are listening and hearing your thoughts and comments. And thank you, Jeff, again.
Thank you. Amir Goodman, then Councilman.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Ms. Swallow. Just very briefly, you don't even need to respond to it, but California's been embedded in this HOV lane process for a decade or more now. Hopefully you are looking and saving time, energy, and funds by seeing what that conversation has resulted in. I drive it frequently either into LA or San Diego, and do see changes there, do see the population giving up single occupancy vehicle travel more for the HOV privilege. But it does, we all hate change, we get used to something and we're fine. And so I just, learn if there's a model out there, let's not waste time and let's fix it to the best of our ability, which I know you're already doing. So this isn't, rocket science of what I'm suggesting. I know you're doing it, but I just want to make sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that comment. And in fact, on occupancy study, California has done some pilots on how to identify occupants in the vehicle given the challenges with tinted windows. And so we are going to look and see how their pilot went and if there's things we can learn from them. So definitely appreciate the comments.
Thank you. Councilman.
Thank you. Jeff, could you come back up here? I just want to ask a couple of questions just so I'm clear on everything. First of all, thank you for answering my questions. I appreciate it. You did it in very good detail, and I think it's good for the public to hear this. But I just want to be clear on what I heard. So as far as the governing authority for the HOV lane system, it's the Nevada Department of Transportation. There's no requirement to have HOV lanes or have them 24/7. That's just a decision by the Department of Transportation, so that's what I heard. There's no, I also heard you say there's no study being done. It's just going to be monitoring the HOV lanes, occupancy, stuff like that, but there's no study being done to determine whether HOV lanes are needed or they're necessary or to remove them. That's not happening. I heard you say that. So correct me if I'm wrong on anything.
Can I just jump in and say that we have been doing HOV studies over the years. The most recent amendment to the HOV plan, which was a study, was conducted in 2018. And so now we're monitoring the system with a full intent to do a study after 3 years. But if the data shows between now and then that something is needed sooner than that, we have committed that we would start that process sooner if needed, if the data shows that.
Okay. And I mean, the volume studies, I mean, the chairman kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, just looking at the HOV lanes, I would say half of them, if not more, are single drivers. I mean, just observation, driving up and down 95, they're single drivers that are using them because they're doing the cost-benefit analysis of getting somewhere faster and probably not getting a citation. So that's interesting information, but it doesn't help much. And obviously you mentioned this, and you're correct. You got to be careful about taking pictures and actually looking at how many people are in a vehicle because of privacy situations. So I appreciate you saying that. The entry-exit points, I'm glad you jumped on that. I mentioned that as a question, and it was like 2 days later, you guys were on it. So I very much appreciated that because that was something that I heard from quite a bit. So this gives me some stuff to chew on for a while. It gives, I guess, everybody in the public some stuff to chew on. But again, I want to reiterate from what I see and what I hear from the public, they want these lanes open. They want them open today, and they're not going to be of any use 20 years from now as HOV lanes. They're just not going to be used as double occupancy. That's just my opinion based on hearing from the public, based on the city of Las Vegas passing a resolution to at least go back to restrict the times. That's just what I see. This information helps out a lot, though, so thank you very much for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome. And if I might point out, there isn't a state or federal mandate that makes the department do HOV lanes. We've committed to the HOV lanes during the development of the whole corridor with our environmental documents and the way we report to FHWA. So there's nothing that says we have to have HOV lanes, but we've committed to it over the last 20 years.
Yep, and I understand that. Okay. That clears up everything a lot, but sometimes when you commit to something, you need to commit to changing it. So my commitment is to keep trying to get these lanes open, or at least back to morning and afternoon. That's what I'm going to just keep fighting for. But it's just me, and we'll just kind of see how it goes. So, but thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
And just two things, Jeff, one, and Christina. One is just and it's not going to get resolved today or probably in the next few years, the concept of an HOV lane. I mean, we've been at it for 20 years. Other parts in the country have been at even longer. But with the rapid change in our industry and transportation, is an HOV lane what we want to be focusing on over the next 20 years? And that's, again, not a question that's going to be answered today, but it's something that we as transportation stakeholders need to start thinking about. Are we investing in a concept, an HOV concept that is antiquated? I don't know the answer, but that's one thing that we continually have to dialogue. And to Councilman Anthony's point, the restricted hours, that is, at least from a significant portion of the public, they want to know the why. And although the information presented today, it didn't really give me a sense of the why. We're doing a commitment to the 24/7 for apparently a 3-year window to try to get that data. And yet, if we don't know if those volumes that are in there are actually solo drivers, I mean, there's conflict there. So I would at least ask the director and the department to consider, as we mature into our HOV lanes, the downside of going back to some restricted lanes. And that, I'm sure, will continue to be a dialogue over the next few months.
It's definitely something that we've heard I don't know that you can go online and not see some mention of HOV in some way, shape, or form. Oftentimes those are positive mentions. So it is something we're monitoring, and we're looking at and trying to make sure that we're being responsive to the public, but also maintaining a transportation system that can move as many people as possible in as safe a manner as possible, with as reliable as a travel time as possible. And that goes to some of the remarks that Jeff made in terms of the 24/7. The volumes are very low in the overnight hours, so low that we actually see dangerous driving on the network. And if we can limit the capacity in some way to make sure that there's more harmonization, it may make the road safer and make your evening commute. And we have a lot of commuters in our valley that do commute in the evening, make them get there to where they want to go in a reliable time and safely.
And I think it's important as quickly as we can to validate those users in the HOV lanes, because the number one complaint I receive personally, and I'm on that 95 every day like Stavros, is the people that are obeying the law when they see multiple cars, when we see multiple cars go by in that HOV lane knowing they're single. That's the frustration. That's where, and I don't expect Highway Patrol, nor should anyone, to be out there trying to catch every one of those illegal users. But that's the issue that we really need to get some solid data to not convince so much as create a better understanding to the people that are obeying the law. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Right. Commissioner.
Just a question on your presentation. First, what you mentioned that on the high end in the HOV lanes, you had 1,800 vehicles in an hour. Is that what you reported to?
Correct.
What is the capacity? If you were full up, how many could you handle?
We can handle probably 2,000 vehicles per hour per lane.
And then over what period of time are you at max, at the 1,800 level?
Oh, I don't have that information.
You're looking at that, though. You're analyzing.
Yeah.
In part, just to jump in and to assist, in part that was a count done on I-15 because the sensors aren't fully operational yet and won't be until March when the ATM signs. So then we'll start being able to have that, the specific count data for I-15.
Okay. Now, another thing that interests us is whether or not there is a commitment as to hours of operation and the air quality mitigation commitments that we've made in environmental filings. Is there something about what we've filed that commits us to 24/7 operation?
The 24/7 operation came about as the recommendations from the 2015 HOV study update. And what it found was the demand in the system was such that it could, if we didn't go 24/7, it could overload the system. So that was one of the reasons that it went to the 24/7 with the restricted access. It was part of the recommendations
overload
from
what
that
system? The entire
the
system?
HOV system, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Can I also just jump in and say that while they weren't, the hours of the system are not in the environmental documents, the hours of the system are directly connected to the approvals of the change of access. So when we added the direct connect ramp from 95 to I-15, and when we added the Neon Gateway access, that new interchange, so a new interchange, it reduced the required spacing between interchanges by federal highways, and they only allowed that because it was exclusively HOV use, which is a 24/7 operation.
And that was unrelated to access points?
Unrelated to the weaving access points, correct. But that new Neon Gateway access that's south of Charleston, it was approved because it was 24/7 operation of the HOV lanes.
So that's an important factor for us because we obviously have a commitment and got a commitment and spent money based upon the working of all of that. One of the things that concerns all of us is we have, in order to widen any of these important highways, the cost of doing so is really, I think at this point, beyond our ability to do. We can do certain things. We can restripe, we can do something in the median. There are things we can do to give us more travel lanes, but travel lane construction and space on these freeway, these freeway systems is at a premium cost to us. And up to this point, we've seen increased traffic as reported today. So one of the things that we're real concerned about, those of us that are local, and not just because we drive on it, but because we have to raise and then allocate monies to match whatever the state does or to marry up to what the state and other sources might bring us, is the efficiency of the expenditure of these dollars. We're committing all of these dollars, and we have important times during the daylight hours even, where there is very little traffic in the HOV lanes and a lot of traffic, particularly in the congested areas of I-15 with the through traffic and the truck traffic and all the rest of it that makes it extremely difficult and even borders on threatening the safety of operation out there because of the need to move back and forth in order to travel and then to get off or to get on and move to a lane that works for you. So we're going to continue to look at it because we don't have an unlimited source of dollars. We have, up to this point, it's almost seemed like we have an unlimited growth in the demand for lanes and space on the lanes. And so to the end that all of us are working together to make this as efficient as we possibly can. When we really need it, we need it open. When we don't need it, that's kind of why we default to, well, wait a minute. We're all out there. We see what's happening. There are times of day when there's very little traffic in the HOV lane and a whole lot of traffic everywhere else. And so, and I know you understand that because you experience it every day as you go back and forth from home to work. Our hope is that this efficiency that is a cost-effective analysis for us is also something that's really in the mix because we don't just have the capacity to add travel lanes. We're beyond that.
That is definitely something we're thinking about. It's definitely something that we're monitoring. And the hope and the belief is that as our volumes, as the need to move people continues to grow, the opportunity to carpool and to use that HOV lane will start to become more enticing and people will move into it. Unfortunately, our system up till last June was only on the 95, so it didn't really feed our major employers. It didn't really feed our primary destination in the valley. Now that it connects to I-15, we need to allow it and everybody to adjust to that, and folks to determine that and recognize that they have the opportunity to find a carpool partner, to find a share, and to reach their destination along I-15 and the resort corridor. We have to allow time for people to make that adjustment. Change is hard. We don't adjust immediately. We are monitoring, and trust me, I am fully aware we do not have enough money to keep building our system, and so we have to make sure that we're using our system as effectively as possible.
I just wondered, what are we doing to look at that behavior change that we want to see in drivers to get them to carpool? Because you could hope for that, but something then needs to be done to encourage.
Some of that is partnering with the RTC on Club Ride and with the carpooling and the commute share. Some of it is going to be, and we are committed to figuring out how to identify the occupancy. Fortunately, we don't have historic occupancy data, but moving forward, recognizing what it is. Occupancy is something that's very hard to measure, and we have recently learned that, as Jeff mentioned, as you drive, there's a lot of tinted windows, and 2+ could mean someone in the back seat, not just someone in the front seat. So we're working on that once we have that initial data, and I can't tell you when that is because I still don't know what my options are in terms of how to collect it. Once we have that, then we'll be able to start monitoring that as well.
Thank you. Jeff, thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman.
Georgia Swallow, I have a quick question. I didn't even think about this, but does 2+ does that also mean if I have my granddaughter like in the back seat of my truck, does that qualify?
Currently, it does.
Oh, that's just an idea. Quick question. Enforcement. I know we're talking. I'm teaching psychology, and it just so happens like right now the unit that my students are discovering is about learning, and we're going over conditioning, classic conditioning, and of course, we're talking about all the positive things, but there's also like negative reinforcement. Let me ask you, so if Councilman Barone is really like, I don't know, let's say I'm being kind of absent-minded, like I might be at some times, and I drift over into the lane, and I get pulled over by a highway patrolman or whoever's patrolling, I get caught. Is that a state law that's being, that I'm violating, or is that a county law? What level is that?
I don't know in terms of the violation. I would have to get back to you specifically because I don't want to misspeak. I might say the wrong thing.
Do you happen to know?
I don't right offhand, no. I would assume it's a state law, but I don't know for sure.
Well, you see, our friends at the state legislature recently, they passed a state law. If our friends at Metro pull someone over and they don't have their registration, which is of course a state violation, the VIG, the fine doesn't actually go into local coffers, it actually goes to the state.
In this case, the fines go to the local coffers. They do not go to the state.
Can we get that confirmed?
HOV tickets do not go to the state.
Okay. Hey, I was just thinking, perhaps there's a little bit more of a partnership that can be generated between our friends at the High Patrol and our local agencies. You know, if the state, of course, you know, they find there's a lot of challenging situations that don't allow them to hire enough patrol officers and state troopers, and because, gosh, you know, I think Metro and North Las Vegas, we are the recipients of many of the patrol officers who want to actually make a little bit more money, and they come over to work for Metro, and they come over to work for North Las Vegas and on lateral transfers. I'm just thinking, perhaps we should actually ask our the state trooper, the commanders, if we can come to some sort of an agreement on patrolling within the different jurisdictions, and get a few more eyes out there. And you know, it could be that people, once they see a guy, you know, like in his 8-cylinder four-wheel drive pickup truck, like someone you might know, and he's pulled over to the side, and he's holding his head because he's facing a stiff fine. Other people might see that and perhaps be deterred. That's just a thought, and I don't know if there's actually any sort of those relationships. But you know, fear is kind of like a motivating factor. You know, and if we have to, you know, break the paddle over a few motorists' butts, you know, with a couple of fines, hit them in the pocketbook, that might help deter in the short term. I'm just thinking. Your thoughts on that?
Enforcement is definitely part of how we can see the change that we're looking to see. Unfortunately, when there is an enforcement, any enforcement on the interstate impacts the flow of the interstate. So it's this balance of making sure that we're seeing the outcomes we want and the use of the lane we want, but also not impeding flow of the system because everybody wants to look at the person who's been pulled over.
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
true.
a balance, and we're working on it. And NHP is definitely a partner in this process, as are the cities, the county, and most importantly, the RTC.
Yes, sometimes you actually get what you ask for, unfortunately, in these instances. I will say this, I also wanted to make sure to thank NDOT. We've been focusing a lot on the travel lanes, which of course is really important. But I wanted to thank you also from the bottom of my heart, not just as a city councilman, but as a teacher and as a resident here in North Las Vegas. Just recently, NDOT completed a couple of safety upgrades. In my ward, a very busy and very dangerous intersection at Lake Mead and Civic Center recently was given an upgrade. You had a nice fencing for people to keep from jaywalking. And then within 100 meters of the intersection, a flashing pedestrian sign. You know, as much as we know that it is illegal and extremely dangerous to jaywalk, of course we know that people in my neighborhood, they do it all the time, students do, right, children do. And I really look at, I think that's gonna be a great enhancement. And I wanna say also, to my friend there, Councilman Olivia Diaz there in the, just right down the street again, along Civic Center, which turns into Eastern, within a couple of hundred meters of the Eastern and Owens, there's another flashing thing. On the way to school today, this morning before I came here, there were some people actually accessing it, and I think it's gonna do a lot to promote safety. I'm hoping those fatality figures do go down. I wanted to thank you very much to making my community a little bit safer, and please extend my best wishes to your entire team.
Councilman Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two final comments. First of all, on the enforcement, I'm glad you brought that up because I was at one time the captain of the Transportation Safety Bureau, and there was a point where when we did traffic type of enforcement, it was just a kind of a shotgun approach. Officers would go out wherever they wanted and write tickets and then come back in. That's not the case anymore. Traffic enforcement is supposed to be data-driven based on where fatalities are occurring and where injuries are occurring. That's where you conduct enforcement. So we mentioned the 200 plus fatalities. That's where the enforcement should be occurring because you're trying to reduce accidents, fatalities, and injuries. HOV lane enforcement does absolutely zero for public safety enforcement. It's just going out there and enforcing one particular law, but it doesn't add to the benefit of trying to reduce accidents and fatalities and injuries. So that's one observation I just wanted to make based on your question. And the other thing is we've been talking a lot about studies and monitoring. Really, the only study that would be important to me is to survey the public and ask them, are you going to call somebody tomorrow to carpool in order to use the HOV lane? And I would venture to guess that would be about 2% would actually do something like that. That's just my own guess. That's really the only survey to me that would justify having HOV lanes. So whether that's going to be done in the future or not, who knows, but I appreciate the presentation. I think this was good for the public.
Very good. Jeff, thank you.
Thank you.
Come back anytime.
Next on the agenda is to approve the consent agenda, which consists of items 5 through 44 and may be taken in one motion.
There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Agenda item 45 is to approve contract number 20-013, Security Services for Transit System and Facilities with Marksman Security Corporation, and Deputy CEO Francis Julian will present this item to you.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. In August, we issued a security service RFP. We received the results from 5 companies back on October 8th. Based on the combined technical and fee scores, Marksman Security Corporation and Allied Universal were the highest ranked firms and shortlisted to participate in the interview and tabletop component conducted on November 19, 2019. On November 21st, 2019, the RTC requested a best and final offer from Marksman and Allied Universal. We received those best and final offers on December 2nd, and on December 9th, the RTC concluded the BAFO evaluation and deemed Marksman the highest ranked firm. The technical aspects were weighted 70%, while the price proposal was weighted 30% for the overall score. It's important to note this is a 3-year base contract with 2 one-year options for a total of 5-year contract. We had an evaluation panel of 6 internal RTC staff and 1 external subject matter expert who provided feedback but did not rate the scores. Here you can see a breakdown of the top 2 proposals between Allied Universal and Marksman Security Corporation. And as we can see, Marksman overall score was the highest of the 2 at 19.25. In terms of their price proposal, Marksman is slightly higher at $3.5 million over the course of 4 years. However, we noticed some discrepancies within the proposal that we believe would have increased the cost of Allied Universal to more than $61 million. I would like to quickly highlight some of the security enhancement that Marksman will be bringing on board. The officers will be equipped with beacon so that we can actually, in real time, see where the officers are deployed and be more responsive to incidents. They will bring in on board really powerful analytic tools where we will be able to predict where to deploy security officers. The security officers will be equipped with body cameras. Marksman will provide additional security personnel, and Marksman will offer better wages for the security officers employed. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Comments or questions? Entertain a motion. Is a motion on the floor? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. MJ, if I may, understanding our policy on public comment discourages interaction by statute. If we could have this presentation, with the indulgence of the board, this is in regards to the recent incident that we all saw yesterday, the accident on the bus. So,
yes, sir.
Council might, within that.
Good morning, Chairman Brown and Commissioners. My name is Don Johnson. I'm the Vice President and General Manager for MV Transportation. We are the service provider for the route that had the passenger-on-passenger assault happen back on December 13th. My personal thoughts go out to the passenger and hope for his quick recovery and continued. We are cooperating fully with the Metropolitan Police Department and also working to get the assailant's picture out on all of our coaches so that our operators or anybody within the public can help identify this individual as quickly as possible and brought to justice. We are committed to passengers' safety and security, and it's the highest priority always for everyone that rides with us every single day. We have outstanding operators out there every day that work to ensure that the passengers' rides are secure and they arrived at their destination safely. We are working daily with the RTC security staff and working with Allied to help identify any security issues that we have on individual routes so we can have security guards identified for those routes that are ever needed. And you have my full commitment that every day that we continue to work diligently to ensure the safety and commitment to a secure system for all riders in the Las Vegas system.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'd just like to say that there's nothing more important than the safety of not only our riders, our transit users, but also our drivers. Mm-hmm. And your company, as well as our other partners, have an excellent track record in doing just that. I don't think this could have been prevented. Regardless, it's one of those, you ask yourself why, and especially those that have viewed it, it's horrific.
Yes.
But likewise, our thoughts and prayers go out to the victim, and I hope there's a full recovery, and we appreciate that. And we hope Metro does at the end of the day, get this gentleman, and yeah.
Absolutely.
But thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, Mr. Chairman, Deputy CEO David Swallow will present agenda items 46 and 47.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Item number 46, that the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada receive an update on development of Onboard, the Regional Mobility Plan. We have entertained and reached out to the community to engage them, to talk about this plan, to get their thoughts, and to incorporate that input into the draft recommendations that we want to present to you today and highlight so that the community knows that they have a voice in helping inform the final recommendations that we will bring back to you. With that, I'd like to introduce Craig Rayborn, RTC's Director of Planning, who will give you the presentation.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today to give this quick update on the draft recommendations for Onboard, which is going to be our region's sort of the blueprint for the next 20 years of mobility for the region. So Onboard is itself a comprehensive long-term transportation plan. Includes eight big strategies that we've identified to help address the top transportation priorities for the region that we've identified over several years of engagement and feedback. So the draft plan is focused on benefiting several modes of transportation, from biking and walking, but also driving and transit. We know that the benefits of mobility, mobility investments go well beyond the direct users of the system. With our region experiencing population growth and visitor growth, comes a potential for significantly more use of our transportation system, and Onboard is intended to address that. If we look at innovative ways for moving people, we can provide these better connections throughout the community, and we can slow the growing traffic congestion and just generally prepare the region for what tomorrow holds in transportation. So I'll take a few minutes to sort of quickly walk through the eight draft recommendations, the main strategies that Onboard has right now. There, okay, I have to be able to make sure I can see the. Okay, so Onboard, the first strategy is to build a high-capacity transit system. We are identifying in the plan right now bus rapid transit and light rail as the two modes, but to be completely honest, with the way in which transportation is changing so rapidly, so frequently right now, what we're really saying is that we're going to choose the most appropriate, highest mode that works on these routes at the time that we get ready to start implementing the specific improvements that we're talking about. But overall, Onboard is recommending about 200 miles of a high-capacity transit system spread across 18 different routes over 2 different phases. The first phase roughly over a 10-year period, a second phase to start right after that. And I'll just note that the details of all of this are in the Onboard survey that I'll link to in the end, and so I'm not going to dwell on any particular one of these strategies. The second strategy is to expand the transit service to maximize access throughout the region to jobs and housing. Don't try to read, I discourage you at least from trying to read the legend right now as I'm going through this, but basically we've identified 3 areas of the valley and the transit services that we currently provide in those areas, and then what we would try to do. So in the blue area, what we're really talking about is roughly the area that's served by our current high-frequency system. And in those areas, the goal would be to increase frequency, improve the amenities within the system, and make more of the routes in that area high frequency. And then in the darker gray area, that's where we want to try to improve or expand service. And so make service more frequent. That's frequent. A lot of the area where we're going to see high capacity transit extends out into that darker gray area. And then the light gray area is really the rest of the valley. And the goal, and I really want to emphasize that this is an aspirational, unfunded plan. We're identifying what the potential future holds, okay? And so the improvements in the rest of the area are to provide some form of high-capacity transit, or sorry, some form of public transit throughout the rest of the valley. And that could be regular bus service, but it could also be some of the more innovative, like the MicroTransit system that we saw earlier, commuter services, things like that, paratransit, not paratransit, rideshare partnerships. And so those are the types of services that we would look at implementing in the rest of the valley. Our third strategy is to make all the travel options safer and more secure. And so this includes improving safety relating to transit and bus stops. It includes bicycle and pedestrian-related safety improvements, but it also includes traffic crash hotspot analysis and countermeasures programs, so that we look at sort of what the trends are, identify hotspots, and then work with the appropriate local jurisdictions to identify countermeasures that would help address those hotspots. The fourth big strategy that is to make short trips easier. That's actually really important. It's a way to make minor infrastructure improvements, mostly sidewalks, bike paths, that would make shorter trips more appealing to take by a mode of just walking or biking, rather than having to get into a car and drive just to the grocery store or a nearby destination. Fifth strategy is we want to expand and make access to dedicated services for seniors, veterans, and persons with disabilities easier. So the goal there is basically to try to double the services that we provide along those lines. The sixth strategy is to improve connections to major destinations like McCarran Airport, but also major job centers, and special event venues. So these would be things like shuttles, expansions of the game day shuttle system that we currently partner with to provide for Golden Knights games, and then the next strategy, and kind of relating then to the next strategy of providing reliable transit service for Strip and downtown employees, making sure that people are able to more easily get to their jobs in the resort corridor area. You know, roughly 20 to 30% of the jobs in the region are in the Strip or in downtown, and this is a way to ensure that we're providing access for them to, particularly to the back of house entrances that a lot of them are asked to use, and we figure that these improvements would actually have pretty significant benefits for a large number of households across the region. And then the final major recommendation is to leverage technology to improve mobility and sustainability. So, and you know, there are simple new technologies or simple technologies that are available to us that we're already starting to apply. We want to make sure we capture those in plans, but they include things like fare payment, you know, making fare payment easier, improving scheduling, the partnership that we just heard about earlier with Uber as a way to schedule trips on multiple apps. So those types of improvements. But then this also includes fleet improvements to the RTC. So we heard earlier a comment about making sure that we continue to look at trying to make our fleet cleaner. So it includes improvements like that, as well as exploring a public electric vehicle charging network as a way to try to improve sustainability and environmental benefits from the transportation system as a whole. And so we're really trying to look at all elements for that. So our next steps, today we're really officially kicking off a 3-month, 90-day community engagement period. It's going to involve a number of presentations at stakeholder events all over the region, ongoing meetings with your own staffs, and then community stakeholder meeting briefings to your boards, I believe, are being scheduled right now. And so we'll be conducting a very extensive outreach effort over the next couple of months. And while we're doing that, we'll be taking that input and sort of dynamically in real time turning that into the final plan document, the document that will include the implementation details for those 8 strategies. So those 8 strategies are actually broken down into 65 individual projects or programs that achieve those strategies. And so we're working with your agencies, your public works plan departments to develop all the final details for those. After we bring this back to you in March, then we'll take it out again for just outreach to the community, just showing what the final plan is. And as we're doing that, we'll be working on identifying long-term funding options. So we're now at the point where we need the public's input. And so we're encouraging everybody to visit onboardsnv.com to gather or to provide input on the recommendations. And so on that website, each of the strategies is presented in detail. Maps, details, the individual, those 65 projects are all identified and listed. And public is able to provide comment as well as rate each one of those strategies individually. And then as, you know, just if knowing that your voice is going to be heard as part of this plan isn't enough, every 2 weeks we'll be selecting one participant, one person who's taken the survey to receive tickets to Golden Knights games. Actually, it might be more than one. I'm not sure exactly what those details are. But we'll be every 2 weeks we'll be doing a drawing to give out tickets to Golden Knights games for people who have taken the survey. That concludes the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions on any of the details or anything with the plan.
Thank you. Mayor Goodman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the report. The one thing I'd like to see included, and maybe you're already doing it, obviously, is the personnel piece of this all, salaries, the benefits. But I look to the future, not 20 years out. I don't know what's happening to those jobs. And of great concern, just even a year out, as autonomous vehicles take over and we lose jobs. Some way to branch out into that component, the people component the workers. And what you're going to have, wait 20 years out, I can't even get there. I can't get past next year with the fear of our employment group. So just that component that probably would take the biggest amount of input. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that comment.
Councilman.
Thank you. I was just at that Go Nevada conference. I attended part of it and kind of watching what's going on at CES. And it seems like a big part of the future of transportation is above ground. Uber, I couldn't believe this, but they're going to roll out in New York City where you can take an Uber to a helicopter to the airport, and get dropped off for $200. I mean, that's unbelievable. I don't know why anyone would not do that. And then CES is rolling out these smaller flying vehicles that can, they fly out of a parking lot and go to another parking lot. So, I mean, the private sector is going to drive this big time, and the federal government's probably going to be involved. So I just think we need to just kind of stay on top of it and to see, does the RTC have any involvement or any way to be involved in this kind of transportation? I think it's going to be absolutely huge. So just if you can just keep on top of that, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor March?
Well, I'm very appreciative of the work that's gone into the community outreach and continues to be part of the strategy as well. And I think the 8 strategies are pretty solid. Couple of things, though, that I heard and that raised concerns for me and is that you talked about 30% of the workforce is actually on the Strip. That means 70% of that workforce is elsewhere in our community. So we need to be thinking strategically forward how we're going to be addressing getting that other 70% out of their cars and getting them to work locations, whether it's in North Las Vegas or out in Summerlin or in the Southwest, where there really isn't a whole lot of service in the county, in the Southwest area, and certainly in Henderson as well, where we have workforce centers that are developing as well. So I think that we need to be looking at new technologies and new systems and services to address that. And as I looked at the service map, and I know you said don't get absorbed into the service map, but I can't help it to some degree, looking at the service map, making sure that these areas that aren't currently getting major emphasis, to figure out how we bring some of those services to the areas that do need those services. Another area that I will continue to raise awareness about, and I have with the RTC previously, is getting the Clark County School District to look at their high school students and how we move them out of the yellow buses and make them part of a transit system that's a community transit system. That's where you teach a culture of transit, is by getting these kids started in high school and riding the bus. I rode buses all through high school, and I appreciate the value of buses and transit, and if I could go from my home today to wherever I needed to go, I certainly would ride, but that isn't available for me. But so I'd like to have us focusing on some of those areas as well to elevate that awareness. And I do appreciate what you're working on. I know that technology and mobility and automation are going to influence a lot of the things that we work on in the future as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I will just comment that in respect to the high school students, that is specifically one of the 65 strategies that we've included in the plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done. Yes, Mayor Goodman.
I'm sorry, that just sent off a light bulb. Aren't we already test piloting in Spring Valley, encouraging the high school students onto the public buses and off the yellows? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, Mayor, we actually have a pilot right now with 2 high schools here. So lots of conversations with the Clark County School District. We hope to expand that.
And when will we get a report?
We'll bring you a report in the next couple of months.
Beautiful,
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Good point, Mayor Marsh.
Councilman.
Actually, before you take off, I do have one question. Can you just explain how this meshes and combines here with other regional plans that we already have, like in place, like Southern Nevada Strong?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've incorporated, we haven't made a list yet, but there are a number of recommendations relating to transportation that Southern Nevada Strong had. I think there are around 39. And I think our assessment a few months ago was that about 16 of those are directly addressed if these strategies and the projects are implemented within that. And then furthermore, you know, as the RTC, as the region's metropolitan planning organization, we'll be starting on a regional transportation plan. It's a federally required document. And so all the work that we're doing on onboard and some of the other plans that we're doing all feed into that. And so, yeah, everything sort of nests together. We'll use onboard as the basis, part of the justification for why we will start a regional walkability plan later this year as well. So, I mean, it all sort of feeds in and links together.
Yeah, one thing that I've always admired about the Southern Nevada Strong is the emphasis on building walkable communities, you know, so quite frankly, you don't have to hail an Uber or build other expensive transportation programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 47 is that the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada receive a presentation on the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition. With that, I'd like to ask Robert Summerfield, Director of Planning for the City of Las Vegas to, nice fast. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Robert?
Madam Vice Chair, members of the Commission, Robert Summerfield, Director of Planning for the City of Las Vegas, for the record, and staffing lead for the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition for this year. With me today is Bill Marion of Purdue Marion Associates to give you a brief presentation on the work that he's been doing with the SNRPC board for the last year, as it's been tackling the question of what does it do going forward. As you know, RTC is the administrator for the Southern Nevada Strong Plan, which is the regional plan for Southern Nevada, and as SNRPC has handed that plan off to the RTC via the help of the City of Henderson, who actually spearheaded that program, they've been trying to figure out what they become or what they do next. And so Bill is going to walk you through kind of the work he's been doing with that team for the last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Commission. For the record, Bill Marion, Purdue Marion and Associates. There have been recent changes in legislation related to the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition, and as a result of that, the coalition has gone through a strategic planning process, and we have been asked and retained by the SNRPC to help facilitate that strategic planning process. I'd like to give a little background before I go into what has happened and recent developments with the SNRPC to date. The SNRPC was created by legislation in 1999 along with the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency for the Washoe County area. There are regional planning councils all over the country, probably about 500 of them in total, and so the creation of these councils was similar to a movement that has been going on nationally. Part of the implementation of the legislation was that the real plan or the real motivation behind creating these regional councils was for them to be actively involved in land use planning and regional planning that would relate to zoning, relate to growth, relate to integration of municipalities' operations and land use planning methodologies. And then it was also tasked with addressing other regional issues that needed regional coordination and regional planning. In reality, so it was very prescriptive in terms of what the makeup of the Regional Planning Coalition would be, how often they would meet, the creation of technical advisory committees and how often they would meet. And so there were very prescriptive restrictions on what it should look like. However, in terms of staffing and budget, there were no such recommendations made. So it's up to the regional council on how it will do it. Those are a couple of real key fundamental limitations on what a regional planning coalition could do. So in this case, there is no dedicated funding source for the Regional Planning Coalition. The funding source is basically a voluntary contribution by all of the members who are on that coalition. So in this case, with the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition, Boulder City and Clark County School District each have one member, so they are responsible for 10% of the budget. North Las Vegas, Henderson, Las Vegas, and Clark County each have 2 members, so each of them are responsible for 20% of the budget. They then, on an annual basis, the coalition determines what its operating budget would be, but then that has to go back to each of the jurisdictions for their approval on that budget. Staffing is another issue. There is no permanent staffing for the SNRPC. So how does the administrative work of the SNRPC move forward? Whoever or whichever entity provides the chair of the coalition, and that chair rotates from municipality to municipality, that municipality is then required to provide the administrative staffing as an in-kind contribution as a result of being chair. So that in this case, the City of Las Vegas has the chair with Councilwoman Michelle Fiore. So that means that the planning department of the City of Henderson is acting as the administrator. The difficulty with that is that then there is no consistent staffing, so that if there are ongoing programs or projects that the SNRPC would like to take on, there's no consistency or no single entity that is responsible for that, because obviously the planning departments of the municipalities, when it was Henderson's turn, now Las Vegas, next time it's going to be North Las Vegas, it's on an already overburdened planning staff to provide the administrative resources. So that's a severe limitation. Another big difference is that if you look at the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Coalition, they actually are a planning entity for the region. Sparks, Washoe County, and the City of Reno have all agreed through their interlocal agreement that they will bring long-range planning issues to the Regional Planning Coalition. They actually have a full-time staff of 6 people. They have a budget of $1 million, 40% of which is paid for by the City of Reno, 30% is paid for by this Washoe County and the City of Sparks. The municipalities locally have not been willing or, in my mind, interested in providing that kind of financial resources to create a similar regional planning coalition like the Truckee Meadows. Another big difference is in a lot of regional councils, they might have 8 or 9 counties as part of the regional council. They will have up to 40 municipalities as part of the regional councils. There are multiple school districts. For a regional planning coalition here, there are already regional boards that cover the vast majority of the big regional issues already in place. So for example, the health district is a regional board already. The Transportation Commission is a regional board. The Homelessness Continuum of Care is a regional board. The Flood Control District, the Water Authority. So there's already integration between them. So there are limited issues that the Regional Planning Coalition can actually take on. The one thing that the Regional Planning Coalition can take on are special projects, but the general rule of thumb via the interlocal agreement is that if a municipality has a special project it wants to have the SNRPC implement, that it's then up to that municipality to provide the administrative resources for that. One of the most successful ones is the Regional Open Space and Trails Project, which was actually implemented by the City of North Las Vegas, agreed to by the other municipalities, but they now fund that through a contract with Get Outdoors Nevada. And so it acts as an independent entity on behalf of the SNRPC to implement the Regional Open Space and Trails Program. Probably the most significant thing that the SNRPC has done is the Southern Nevada Strong Regional Plan. That was an initiative that was brought to the SNRPC by the City of Henderson, and the City of Henderson actually created the grant for the Department of Housing and Urban Development for about $3.5 million in order to implement that plan, or to create that plan. Councilwoman, and now Mayor March, but then Councilwoman March was the chairman of the Southern Nevada Strong Stakeholder Committee, which was made up of all of the municipalities as well as representatives from the regional boards as well as other community stakeholders. The plan was finalized in 2015. I can personally tell you that the SNRPC itself as an entity had very little involvement in the actual facilitation of the plan. It literally was left up to the City of Henderson and then the participating municipalities to do that. Reports were then made to the SNRPC about the progress of the plan, but the SNRPC did not provide any administrative or other support for the implementation of it. That then got us to 2015 when the regional plan was created, and I should remind you, this is the first federally recognized regional plan in Southern Nevada and is very instrumental in allowing municipalities and the region to compete for federal grants and federal funding. Again, the SNRPC has no staff. So if the SNRPC had been the controlling entity for the regional plan and for the implementation of it, it probably would have sat on a shelf. So it was, the RTC was asked if it would, as the Metropolitan Planning Organization for Southern Nevada, would it be willing and interested in taking on the responsibility of the implementation and continued ongoing development of the regional plan? They then agreed that they would like to take that on, which they have and have done a wonderful job with. But in order to allow that to happen, we had to get legislative approval. So we went to the legislature in 2017. The legislature allowed for the RTC to become the implementation or the implementer of the Southern Nevada Regional Plan. And at the same time, they then repealed all of the restrictive conditions that they had for the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition, except for the provision that the SNRPC would be responsible for the existence of a regional plan that would have a variety of characteristics to it. What that then meant was, and this is why the strategic planning process is now in place, it really gives the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition the opportunity to determine, given the environment that it is in, what does it want to be? What does it want to do? How does it want to make itself up? How does it want to staff itself? It is no longer bound by the restrictions that the original legislation put in place. Hence the strategic planning. So we then conducted interviews with all of the planning departments at every one of the municipalities, including the Clark County School District. We then held 3 workshops where we evaluated the purpose, the opportunities, and indeed even the relevance of having a regional planning coalition, given its freedom to be now whatever it wants to be, but also recognizing that there are already regional entities out there covering issues that it would not have jurisdiction or authority over. To get down to brass tacks, there was a lot of discussion, a lot of interaction, and it really came down to one. I mean, the first thing I can tell you is that it was general consensus that to exist as it is was not a position of relevance, would not work. So it was either to keep the SNRPC but find new relevance and new activities and new structures for it, or to disband, which the legislation in 2017 also opened the door for them to do. In August of 2019, the SNRPC board met and over a variety of votes voted 6-4 to disband and to transfer its remaining responsibility to another regional entity. So that is the status of the SNRPC today, and we thought that, and I'm pleased that Vice Chair March asked for a presentation. Chairwoman Michelle Fiore asked me as the consultant to make that presentation on the SNRPC's behalf. So I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Mayor Goodman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Marion. Wow. one who realizes that from our perspective and what you have just said here, to me it's duplicating and has no relevance, the body, and why to have a body that is already covered in its job focus and need by other entities. I mean, that's what I'm hearing from you. And certainly with Southern Nevada Strong, to me, being under the umbrella of the RTC and having the paid staff to implement and work through what needs to be done, it sounds like you have a committee, a commission, a body that has no purpose to meet at this point. And so I'm wondering why, if the vote had happened at 6-4 to disband, why isn't it disbanded? I mean, you're trying to come up with a purpose for it. Why do we need another committee? Why do we need to waste time, money, and fill up the HOV lanes? So, I mean, if the vote was 6-4, is that invalid to disband it?
Mr. Chairman, if I may address that question for Mayor Goodman. So, as a part of that vote in August, the planning directors with the City of Las Vegas Planning Department as the lead staff began the work of trying to determine if there was another regional body, because that's a key component of that vote. So it was a 6-4 vote to disband, provided that the remaining statutory obligations could be passed to another regional body. With that, staff and members of the planning directors, which are the planning directors from all of the jurisdictions that make up the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition, including representation from the RTC, began that conversation of, okay, so where could this be? And so we've begun those conversations. At this point, though, we have not received any direction back from any group. In fact, I think this part of the reason, and I don't want to speak for Mayor March, but I think part of the reason this was brought to this attention was because at this point, to my knowledge, this board wasn't aware that this was a question that may be something that this board would be interested in seeing those, or being willing to take on those remaining statutory obligations, which include things that the RTC is interested in, like TOD incentive programs, like regional conformance to a comprehensive plan regional conformance. So as the administrator for the regional plan, one of the things that we as jurisdictions are supposed to do is we're supposed to get regional conformance. So our long-range plans at the City of Las Vegas or the City of North Las Vegas or Henderson, they're supposed to be in alignment with the regional plan. And so conducting that kind of impartial analysis to report on those things. So those are kind of some of the remaining statutory obligations for regional planning. At this point, though, since we have not been able to identify a regional body that is willing to accept those remaining SNRPC statutory responsibilities, we haven't been able to move forward with processing that vote and moving to a disbandment plan.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, through you, in your professional opinion and in your contacts, number one, which bodies have been asked to take it over? And out of due respect to Mayor March and having brought this forward and given us an arm to the federal government through it, and having Southern Nevada Strong under the RTC, I don't see any reason why it continues. It looks like it's trying to find a home to be something, the SNRPC. What is your professional opinion?
So the planning directors have met multiple times since August to have, to some degree, that conversation. The RTC is, I think, in our discussions, the most likely regional candidate because it does have under the MPO. While transportation is its focus, because it has SNS, it has a slightly broader mandate, or has developed a slightly broader mandate. Most of the other regional bodies, as Mr. Marion kind of outlined, a few of those have very specific purposes, and so it wouldn't make a lot of sense to have a TOD incentive obligation at regional flood or something like that to ask one of those boards to take on. And so that has really been where the conversation has been for the most part, taking a look at what other regional options may be. RTC is the one I think most of the members of the planning directors think is appropriate, but again, we can't just give that to RTC. RTC has to be willing to accept that at some point down the road. And I know that's not an action item. This is just.
Is this with Southern Nevada Strong such a significant piece of improvement? Is this, Mr. Chairman, something that has to come back in a formal way to this body to ask that? Because it just seems there's no necessity. We're just creating a body that has no necessity if, in fact, the RTC and this body sees the value of it, especially since the obligation and staffing and funding is already there for Southern Nevada Strong. I don't even see why this is out there since it was voted on to disband, except for the fact this body, I don't think, was ever presented with that. Or
so, if I may, to my knowledge, the SNRPC has not made a formal request to any entity to take that responsibility on. So one of the reasons for even having a discussion with you is that it might be a recommendation that the SNRPC actually make a formal request, which then would put it on the RTC as an action item for discussion and possible action.
does that have to be accepted then by our chairman to, or vice chairman to consider that, or what? What is the process, Mr. Chairman?
Council, what's our process?
Pass the buck.
Not it. Yeah, I think currently this is for informational purposes only. So to echo what Mr. Marion has said, there's actually no formal invitation to this board at all to do anything at this point in time. I think if SNRPC in its process creates its own direction where it broadcasts out a need to find a place to put itself, or a home, as you've eloquently put it, then that it may do so. We have no interaction at all with that board on that note. So I think you have two ships currently passing in the night.
Okay, thank you. That's clear. Then as a presentation only, that's obvious. Thank you.
Thank you. The RTC and the MPO specifically have already taken on the primary role of the SNRPC that the SNRPC was tasked to do in NRS, which is to administer the regional plan. The remaining duties seem complementary to the primary role that I think is important for the MPO and Southern Nevada Strong to play. And I have a couple questions for Craig Rayburn. Craig, if you could come forward. So Craig, you've had a chance to review the remaining duties that are still under the umbrella of SNRPC. And what impact would that have on your team or your budget to absorb those remaining roles?
Well, it would depend on exactly how we were asked to implement those tasks and what that work program would actually look like. Although there are some duties that are specifically identified within NRS that the Regional Planning Coalition is responsible for carrying out, there's a whole bunch more as well. And so it really kind of depends on exactly what we're asked to do and what exactly the work program would be. I mean,
so are there some things under SNRPC that would not fit, that would not be a good thing to transition over, and can you identify what those might be? So
I wouldn't say that there are any that are inappropriate. I mean, one of the things that I'll comment on is the process that the Regional Planning Coalition has gone through as they've been conducting their strategic assessment or strategic planning process has really focused on regional councils that are also not MPOs. And in reality, that probably hindered them a little bit in that there are a large number, I mean, most MPOs and regional councils are the same entity in regions, or they're so closely intertwined that they're essentially indistinguishable. So the tasks that are identified in NRS are ones that councils of government that are also functioning as MPOs in a number of places across the country they perform those tasks. It's really just a question from my perspective with just trying to figure out like staffing needs and costs and impacts on the department. It's really a question of, again, like how we're asked to do that. Are we asked to host meetings? Is there still a board that we're interacting with? It's those kinds of details. We are as the regional planning team within the MPO, so the Southern Nevada Strong team. We've put together a work program that we're starting to formally circulate next week. And so that would, if it goes through that process, it comes back to this board in February. And it identifies a number of tasks that start to lay out a clear definition for us of what administering Southern Nevada Strong consists of, and the types of tracking that we do, the types of activities and engagement and outreach that we do, and some of the special planning projects that we would do sort of under that branding. And so the range of things that could start to change and morph into if Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition responsibilities came to us could change quite a bit.
And you are in no way saying that you're taking over the planning efforts or the individual identities and planning initiatives of each of the municipalities in the county, that they're each very distinct and unique, and they plan specific ways, that you're basically providing a role that perhaps is convening, that's supporting efforts that they're pursuing and supporting initiatives, but you're not telling them how to plan or to
That's absolutely
pursue.
correct.
But there's some interconnectedness where if I'm planning for transportation in Henderson, that perhaps there's a link between what I'm doing in Henderson and what's happening in the county that's adjacent to me or Boulder City, so that there's some linkages.
Exactly, yes. So similar to how we function as the Regional Transportation Planning Organization, where we don't impose a plan or a project on any jurisdictions. The same thing is how we approach Southern Nevada Strong. So the Regional Planning Coalition is what, in the planning geekdom world, we call a voluntary participation effort. And so we carry that philosophy through in the way that we're implementing or administering Southern Nevada Strong. So it's all voluntary. We convene, we encourage. We're this time around we're going to be doing some studies and planning efforts, but they're to identify issues and not try to step on the jurisdictional responsibilities of any of the local agencies.
Thank you. I think as a community we need to do what makes sense for Southern Nevada, clearly, and I think that we have an entity in Southern Nevada Strong with their staff that has expertise and understands the regional plan that was participated in by an entire community and I think that Southern Nevada Strong actually had 78,000 inputs from the community. This was one of the most extensive community engaged processes where we heard from folks across the community as to what they felt should be involved in the development of this plan. So I know that we also heard from HUD that they felt that Southern Nevada Strong was probably the body where regional planning should occur and has, because of our engagement in this process, has allowed us to pursue federal grants from the federal government because of our engagement there. So I know that this isn't an action item. I think we probably need to have SNRPC perhaps make a request to us to formally look at it if that's their will or their intention. But clearly I think that from hearing from Craig, it looks like Southern Nevada Strong really has the capacity to be able to carry this forward. So I don't know, public comment or other commissioners?
Councilman?
Mesquite was not much involved in the 2015 Southern Nevada Strong effort. Since Craig has been on board, we've had some conversations about that. I'm curious about whether or not Mesquite's been involved in the Regional Planning Coalition.
Mesquite is not a member of the Regional Planning Coalition.
Do you know why?
By statute, it was mandated that the membership would be Henderson, Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, Clark County School District, and Clark County.
So I want to just clarify that. So the act specified those entities. The statute actually specifies the county, the city of Las Vegas, the city of North Las Vegas, and Henderson must participate. So at a bare minimum, those 4 entities must participate in regional planning through an interlocal, which could potentially then be assigned elsewhere. But yes, to Mr. Marion's point, the special act that was done that did SNRPC, that one specified those particular agencies and entities, and Mesquite unfortunately was not, at that time, was not a part of the grouping.
Thanks.
Mayor?
Yes, I would just like to make the comment. I had served on the SNRPC for 2 years, and I think Mr. Marion brought some of the factors out in that. But I do believe it's important for this body to understand the responsibilities that would be asked to be transferred to the RTC. Southern Nevada Strong is one of those that has already been brought to the RTC. The statute that created the Regional Planning Coalition and the one up north, they were intended to accomplish certain things, and what I saw on the SNRPC was just a lot of disagreement on what the direction of that body should have been. But it does have some specific requirements that were asked of that body to do. Now, whether those were actually being accomplished, that's a different matter. But I would like to see something presented to this commission that would specify exactly what those responsibilities are. I think Mr. Marion has certainly touched on some of those, but there are others in that statute, and to have a clear understanding of what the SNRPC would be asking this commission to take on, I believe that's important. Thank you.
And if I may address that, if the SNRPC were to make a formal request to the RTC to take that responsibility, that would be part of the formal request.
Wondered how many remaining items, since the legislature addressed this in the last session, in 17, how many remaining items are really part of the SNRPC obligation that would really be coming over to SNS? Do you have?
Again, what I would tell you is that in the language of the legislation, it is that the truly remaining responsibility is that the Regional Planning Coalition shall develop a comprehensive regional policy plan for the balanced economic, social, physical, environmental, and fiscal development and orderly management of the growth of the region for a period of at least 20 years. The comprehensive regional policy plan must contain recommendations of policy to carry out each part of the plan. And then as section 2 of that, and I won't read all of this, but it is a number of issues that are prescribed that need to be considered as part of that plan.
I think about, as you suggested, that there are many regional bodies who do different things, like the LVGEA, which all of us are members of, look at that economic impact. And Southern Nevada Strong looks at a lot of the regional planning concerns. And I know that there's a representative of the LVGEA who actually sits on the Southern Nevada Strong board as well. You know, I think that there's one of the things that I love about Southern Nevada is the collaboration and the coordination and the cooperation that occurs between the various municipalities and the entities that serve in Southern Nevada, because we all have an interest in making Southern Nevada the best that it can be. And I love that about the collaboration that does occur in this community. And when there are specific issues that come up, for example, climate change, you know, we have such a capacity to be able to do agreements between our municipalities to address concerns that it doesn't necessarily require the entity of SNRPC or even Southern Nevada Strong to be able to join together to unite on a particular issue or a concern that we may have as a community, that we can actually have a joint agreement between our municipalities to address certain specific issues.
See if I can wind this up here. A general comment, and this is after, I've never sat on the committee, the Regional Planning Coalition, but my sense over the years has been, unlike water and sewer and roads and police and fire that really don't care about jurisdictional boundaries, this part of this committee and the creation of the Planning Coalition was to get into zoning and development and growth, which is almost sacred to our cities and county. And a regional body, at least from my perspective, has always been viewed as you're not going to tell me how my community will grow. Unlike, again, roads, water, sewer. That has been, I think, the biggest challenge. The mayor indicated that there's always, or seems to be disagreement on what direction or what we should be. That said, I think after the dialogue today, I would encourage the members of this board to communicate to the members of the, I guess it's not defunct yet officially, it's still in limbo. Talk to those members and ask them if they want to formally request to the RTC. I don't think we can do anything as a board until we receive something from the Planning Coalition. So I would ask us to talk to our respective members. They may not send that letter, but until we get that, we're in a position, I'm not, other than discussing and offering opinions, I don't think we can do anything. So that would be my direction to Bill and those that are supporting it. Talk to the board and see what they want to do.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
If I might address, I'll just address that. The SNRPC does have a board meeting in later this month, and I believe it's the 27th or 26th. It's something. It's the last Tuesday. And you know, if you had your members talk to your respective members on the SNRPC board, and that might be something that would be brought up at that January meeting to discuss a formal request.
Commissioner?
Thank you. I've been aware of this discussion for some time. I've actually had a view about it, and we can share it at another time, but I was around, I was serving as the Mayor Henderson when the SNRPC language came forward. Actually, it started, as you've suggested, Bill, as the same in both the North and the South. And we had a violent reaction to this notion that we're going to cede zoning, planning kinds of authority to a regional board. And it wasn't just Henderson, but all of the jurisdictions were violently, reacted violently to that. And what was interesting to us back then, and I'm not the only one who was around and who was in it, but what we observed and talked about a lot was how the SNRPC became, in its current form, or at least in the form it was in before anything else happened after its initial adoption legislatively, was more of a reaction to our reaction. Well then, what could we do to have a regional planning coalition in Southern Nevada? And it became, that really was the way that we got into a discussion about what might we be willing to cede to some regional authority. So over time, there really have been significant and material regional issues that have come up. There are some that persist. There are others that have come and gone, and there are some that have come recently and will never go. And we are working on them very independently, trying to work together, and I think we're collaborating as best we might, but there are things that require some significant collaboration, a lot of work, a lot of effort, probably a lot of budget to help us get through. I've been somewhat concerned about the budget. I don't know what happened when I don't know how Southern Nevada Strong is funded in real specific ways, but there is surely the need for there to be budgeted allocation for the rest of the things that we're talking about, if we're to have staff people at some regional board support the activities, all of us know that the staffs make us look good, because the details get worked through and discovered, vetted, and presented to us for whatever refinement and adoption is required. But I think that the history is kind of interesting because of the context we find ourselves in now. Now, when it comes to the SNRPC was established by the legislature. Is there legislation that would be required, or is what happened in 2017 sufficient that nothing more legislatively would be required, in your view?
We would, in most likelihood, need to go back to the legislature to formally, or the SNRPC would need to go back to the legislature to formally disband and formally transfer responsibility.
Okay. So just a comment on some of the things, or maybe a thing that I think could benefit from intense regional discussion. The discussion is, it's not, I'm not suggesting there isn't discussion and even regional discussion, but it isn't as focused as it needs to be, in my view. And there is a whole lot of disparate activity going on, some of which is fully coordinate with other activity, some of it is not, some of it is real independent. But if you look, for instance, at the challenges that we have with homelessness today, they affect all the jurisdictions, even jurisdictions where there was a count and the count was in single digits. Still, when we look at the data for those who are receiving help from our social services departments at the county, we see that some of those people even list as their last city of residence cities that don't really have a significant homeless population within them right today. It affects all of us. We recognize that the expenditures required to meet the public safety challenges are spread across all of us that have public safety departments. We know that social services is largely centered at Clark County. We have an enormous commitment on the part of the county to step up and work to address the things that we can and that make sense in collaboration with the other jurisdictions, but primarily there is a significant financial obligation on the back of the county already. But it doesn't make sense for us to operate in a vacuum. And I have thought to myself, before I knew of this debate, that the SNRPC was the perfect place for, given the participation there, the membership, was the perfect place where many of these homeless initiatives could finally be discussed in ways that would enable everyone to get a sense of how they might affect them immediately and maybe even going forward. I don't know how on earth we bring that kind of a consideration, that kind of a charge to the RTC at any level. If this were an agency, if for instance we had commitments for budget, it might be a completely different and more interesting discussion, but we don't. What we have is a voluntary commitment from the jurisdictions, and I think, frankly, that the output in the context of what has, if you look at what we've done with very little, they've done a lot with very little. But I get that there is not a long list of delegated responsibility over which they have primary or maybe exclusive responsibility. I understand that. So no matter what happens to SNRPC, if they're disbanded and folded into something else, fine, I guess we'll debate that and figure it out over time, and the legislature will do whatever it does. Or on the other hand, maybe we each need to be thinking about what are some of the things that ought to properly be delegated to the agency and what funding would follow that delegation in order to address it in an appropriate way that would be reflective of the needs of the entire valley, the entire community in the county. So I suppose it's fair to say that my mind is somewhat open, but given the way this thing started, it's hard for me to get all the way there at this point. And so I look forward to a much more in-depth and robust discussion. We have really talented people from all of the jurisdictions that are currently on that board who, in my estimation, could be doing some things in a more collaborative and coordinated, formal way than we're currently doing today, right there on some issues that affect us all. And there are a couple of other things where some of the jurisdictions have taken action and the county has not yet. Others where the county has taken action, maybe others haven't, but all of them have regional reach. They affect all of us. And in so many cases, it's a mistake to have one approach end at the border of the jurisdiction and a completely different and distinctive approach happening across the entity's boundary. So those are some things that I hope we're all going to be able to think about and talk about as we go forward with this discussion, no matter how it goes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there's no need for agenda item 48. We have no legal matters to discuss, so we'll move to agenda item 49, which is to conduct your last and final citizens participation.
It's the second time set aside for public comment. Those wishing to speak to the board, now is your opportunity. Those that don't want to speak to the board, leave with this question in mind. It's a happy new year, but some of us have been told that it's not a happy new decade. Is that true or false? Just contemplate, something to reflect on. Sir.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak. This is in reference to item number 4, and it's too bad Ms. Swallow had to leave. I've attended the NDOT meetings.
Pardon me, just for the record, she had to catch a flight. She's heading back east to DC, so she was excused. Thank you.
Robert Solomon. I've lived a lot of areas in this country, and the only place that I've seen where the HOV lanes work was in Washington, D.C. And we had to adjust to it, but they did not work in New York City, and they implemented them in New Jersey, and they removed them because they did not work. Traffic was flowing beautifully here. I tell people I'm living the dream here. You know, a great state, a great area, but you put the HOV lanes in, and it seems to me, the other day, I'm driving, now I'm not in the HOV lane, and I'm driving 15 north, approximately the speed limit, and all of a sudden, because of Tropicana, the mess at Tropicana and the mess at Flamingo, traffic ahead of me came to a complete stop. So as an alternative to avoid an accident, I went over to the HOV lane and then crossed back over as soon as I got past Flamingo. This is an accident waiting to happen if you continue these HOV lanes. Even in Arizona, for example, driving to Arizona, they only have it 6 hours a day, 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. I just don't understand why you have it 24/7, 365. At the very least, it should be no more than 6 hours a day, Monday through Friday. But even then, I think you'll find, compared to some of the pictures that were put on the board there, you look at the HOV lanes, it's, Mr. Anthony, you mentioned 2%. I'd venture to say the traffic volume in HOV lanes is a lot less than that with double passengers. We're a 24/7 city. We're not a Washington, D.C. or somewhere where people can carpool. I would love to carpool with people. When I have an opportunity, I do. But we're not a carpool city. And when I do, it's not during working hours, say. So I'm living the dream here. It's great. It's just something that you need to work on and consider and have an open mind. I'm all for saving money and trying to get people to carpool and this sort of thing, but I don't think it's going to work present as you have it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Rita Varney?
I'm presenting today for Robin Kincaid, who wasn't able to attend, but she wanted this to be on record. My name is Robin Kincaid, and this is the 17th time that I have come before this commission regarding the need to change paratransit service area back to the 2011 configuration. My daughter Kayla lives in the service area but cannot access essential services that have either relocated out of the service area, or in some instances, the business could not find a building that was in the service area. There have been many RTC advertising campaigns that tell people with disabilities where to live. What is just as concerning is now will the RTC campaign tell people where they can shop, see their doctor, attend in the place of their worship, or attempt to visit a new friend. If any of these businesses do move out of the service area, people with disabilities will be forced to start all over to replace these services or simply eliminate them as part of their lives. I have attempted in previous conversations with the Commission to explore solutions to resolve the service area restrictions. Let's start 2020 by determining the cost of expanding the service area and reconfiguring the shape of the service that eliminate inlets and contain essential services. Another solution would also like to have the Commission to consider a premium rate to cover additional costs of expanding the service area. I have made several public record requests since 12/12/19 through the public records request, and I am still waiting for the information. Perhaps the answers will help us understand the $2.4 million budget hit for the failed Trip to the Strip program. In conclusion, I need to remind everyone here that this public comment period is supposed to be a forum for the public to inform, advise, and an opportunity to problem solve when services are not meeting the needs of the public. I am requesting that you provide information that is honest, transparent, and direct. Thank you. And as a side note for myself, I'd like to also take note that we have a new police substation that is not accessible. It's outside of the paratransit service area.
Where, Rita, is that up at Far Hills?
It's the new Summerlin.
Far Hills.
So it's outside of the service area. So even if someone were to live in the service area and wanted to go there to report something, they wouldn't be able to. Okay. So as you're building, you're continuing to build, please take into consideration that we live out there and we would like to go to these places so you continue to build. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Versnick?
My name is Stephanie Versnick. I'm speaking before you for the 23rd time. I'm asking this commission to expand the service area. When I started attending these meetings almost 2 years ago, I had been told that it would cost approximately $1.5 million to expand the service area. Each month, I continue to listen how the RTC is spending money. I don't understand how we can spend millions on a tourist pilot program like Trip to Strip, which after the big promotion and the millions spent on marketing is now shut down. We spent $2.9 million on the Trip to Strip. Maybe that money could have been used to expand the service area. I've been asking for almost 2 years to expand the service area and spend the approximately $1.5 million to give more people who live and work here in my community, your community, our community, access to transportation. I have even suggested of paying a premium fare for being outside the service area. Perhaps a pilot program. It seems that this is definitely not a priority of the Commission. I testify each month because that is the only way of getting my message out on public record. Each month I attend these meetings, I continuously hear the excuses about funding and how there is not enough money to expand the service area. I hear how persons with disabilities are being told where to live, where they can bank, worship, and access their community due to the service area restrictions. This is not right. People should not be told where to live. It seems to me that this is dictating how and where people with disabilities live their lives. Commissioners, please make this year the year. Vote next month to expand the service area for your constituents with disabilities. Do the right thing. Listen to the needs of your community.
Thank you for your comments. Regarding New Year's Eve bus schedule, Lyle, and I'm going to let you give me the last name. I'm missing a couple letters here.
Dixon, D-I-C-K-S-O-N.
My apologies.
Good morning, Commission. I've never been here before, never expected to be here. I live in Sun City, Summerlin, and on New Year's Eve I decided, a friend of mine, we were going to take the bus, the wax bus, out to the Strip. Going out there, it was wonderful. It was a great experience. I cannot compliment them more. I met a nice family from San Francisco, but on the way back was a totally different experience. We were abandoned by MTV. The buses were supposed to run till 4 o'clock in the morning. It was advertised on the temporary bus stop. The bus driver told us it was running till 4:30 in the morning. And I'm going to use the terms negligence and possible fraud. And I do that because I'm a retired police sergeant from Detroit. I'm a former prosecuting attorney. Matter of fact, I was a hearing officer for Clark County for air quality. I used to sit in Mr. Brown's chair adjudicating air quality cases as well as for human resources for Clark County, and now I'm retired. But I waited for the bus. I got back to the bus stop about 1:30. I met the family that I had met on the bus coming out there. They had been at that bus stop since 12:30 in the morning. No wax buses were running anymore. They waited about 2 hours or so. I waited about 2 hours and 15 minutes. We were abandoned there. I contacted RTC. They referred me over to MTV, spoke to the customer service people there. Totally useless. They were the most rudest people, and they did nothing but aggravate the situation the next day that they were open. The family that was with me, the San Francisco family, they had to take an Uber. I know they were running about $59 just to go back to their hotel, which they were staying at the Suncoast. I ended up having to be forced to take an Uber, and that was $42. Me and my friend, we were lucky enough to get an Uber pool, and we were lucky enough to share that ride with a couple of ladies of ill repute, as you might say. I just want to make sure you guys were aware of it. They said they were going to run till 4 o'clock. As I contacted MTV, I got different stories. First they said it was 4 o'clock that they had contracted with RTC. Then they changed it to 2 o'clock. But I know that the family from San Francisco told me they had not seen a bus and they were there since 12:30 a.m. So I'm really kind of concerned. Clearly there was negligence on their part. Secondarily, I don't know what your contract indicated with them or what they billed you for, but they were telling us 4 o'clock. I don't know if they billed you till 4 o'clock in the morning. Then they changed it to, we stopped the buses at 2 o'clock, but in fact they actually stopped those buses prior to 12:30 a.m. on New Year's Day. So I think there's enough reasonable suspicion there to believe that maybe they were perpetrating a fraud on the RTC, and somebody should take a look at it. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Mr. Dixon, we'll have one of our staff members talk to you after.
Certainly.
Thank you. Alita Dupree.
Chair Brown and members, Alita Dupree for the record. Thank you. Busy time. Went to GoEnvy. Had a great time. Definitely worth it. I think the favorite thing I found about GoEnvy was the underlying common denominator that I saw with these wonderful folks who came from all over the world is one word: equity. GoEnvy was all about equity. I was part of that. And so I think it's important that we engage and continue to spread these ideas which have the end result of equity. So if you turn the camera on, I was there at the announcement, and I have this transit app, and I have a 2-hour pass waiting for me to activate. So I'm doing this, and the Uber app with the tickets, hopefully that goes nationwide, because I have lots and lots of transit apps and cards. So this is helpful. And we're going to get new buses. Thanks for going out and buying 20 more buses. I rode the 19,000 series buses in both long and short versions, so that's very helpful. These are more user-friendly vehicles. For, as I've stated to you before, I'm a person with challenges and disabilities that are 24/7. And I believe in the importance of HOV lanes, and I've ridden HOV lanes in many parts of the country, and I actually do call all the time for somebody to carpool with, and in the possibility we may ride the HOV lane. So I do these things. I've done them for years. So I just try to stand up. I am saddened about the strip shutting down, because I used it. And not just to go within the strip, but to come here and to go to the convention center and go to the town square. I used to come here to meetings with you. So I think hopefully we can revisit this, because it was a very user-friendly program for me. It was not a failure, because I've been served. You bought me these long buses, and I'm being served. You run the Sahara route 24/7. This transit app here tells me when buses are coming. This iPhone is not a luxury for me. It's a toolbox. I've had iPhone since 2008. I'm going to do what I have to do to stay safe. So I hope that we can continue the work, and we have to remember the wholeness of this community, and that includes the Strip. We have to protect this corridor that is the Strip, because it's my home too. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good morning or good afternoon. I'm not sure what time it is. My name is Shelley Jones, and I'm here to brag on Tango. My sister thought the meeting was next Thursday instead of today, so she had asked me to convey her appreciation for the system, and she finally got on to become a Tango member. And she still rides the buses, and she's very appreciative of everything. She is totally blind, and she's in a wheelchair, and everybody's been very helpful to her. And I want to let who's ever here for Tango keep doing a good job. I would like to see the program become unlimited ridership financially. I think that would really be a great thing, since we do have to pay for it. And as far as the bus service goes, I love all the drivers that is under Sandy Neely. He's doing a great job. I wouldn't want to have his job. But have a great New Year, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for your comments. Raymond.
Oh, yes.
Happy New Year. Good morning, Mr. Chairman Brown, CEO Maynard. For the record, my name is Raymond Fletcher. For the past several months, I have been coming up here because I was offended by people who were not disabled coming up and speaking on behalf of people with disabilities. I've made my point. You have heard my voice. I need not come up here each and every month and beat the horse that is already dead. What I would like to talk about is, as we begin a new year, what some of you may not know is this July we will be celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Unfortunately, so many barriers still exist in our community to persons with disabilities, whether it be access to education, whether it be access to employment, whether it be access to health care. We with disabilities, and I'm not trying to speak on behalf of anyone else because no one elected me to do so. I am only speaking on behalf of myself. We face so many barriers to equality. Whether you may realize it or not, any one of us can be disabled, become disabled at any moment, just sitting here from birth or prior to taking our very last breath. A disability unites everyone. It does not judge on gender, on race, on religion, or national origin. So I want to issue a challenge to those of you that are preparing for your State of the City address, those of you that work on various boards, and those of you that just transitioned into your new role. We are in a new year. So why don't we try to bring in more people with disabilities? As I look throughout the community, I don't see any city managers with disabilities. I don't see any city council staff directors, staff assistants, or any of those natures with disabilities. So often, I will give you an example. Two examples actually. Going to apply for a job at the new Chick-fil-A that opened up, there was an advertisement for assistant manager. Gentleman pointed to a wall and said you would have to reach into a chute. Can you do this? As I watched the other interviewees, none of them had to do that. But as the man hit the wall and pretended to reach into a chute, he hit the wall. I said, neither can you. We have CES going on this week. I interviewed to be a brand ambassador. Lady asked me, can you work a tablet? As many people see, my phone is sitting here. You all think I'm flipping you off with the way my hand is. Really, I'm not. But, I work a tablet, and I don't think that I should have to show what I can and cannot do. Neither do able-bodied people. I cannot look at any of you, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir. I do not look at any of you and judge you on any abilities or education you may or may not have, much like people, but unfortunately people look at those of us with disabilities and think we can't do it. So a lot of times they want to give those of us with disabilities menial jobs. But I challenge you, look past the disability and look at the individual. What can they do? Bring more people into. We have over 61 million people in these United States with disabilities. In closing, someone that I'm learning to respect shared a story of a blind organization that made uniforms for our military. She shared with me how they were the world softball champions for blind people. And I'm like, how can a blind person know when to swing at a ball? And she told me about a noise that was on the ball. We never stop learning. I'm about to turn 43 next week. I've lived through 6 decades, 2 centuries, 2 millennia. We never stop learning. We never stop challenging ourselves. So in 2020, that's the challenge I make to each and every one of you. Please judge the individual on them and try to bring more people with disabilities into the workplace. Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board? Are we going to opine whether it's a new year, a new decade, or?
Happy New Year. My name is Mark Ratty, the president and founder of Marksman Security Corporation. I'm just here today to say thank you. Thank you to the board. Thank you to the RTC, and thank you to the evaluation team from our team and our family, which I'm so proud of. Just thank you for this opportunity. Thanks.
You came all the way down. Put your name on the record.
Jason.
Pardon me.
Jason Logston, Senior Vice President for Marksman Security here in Southern Nevada. On behalf of our team in Southern Nevada, we've worked very hard to be here today, and those that aren't here today, they thank you as well. So thank you so much. It's been a long day. I'm sure you want to close out at some point. Thank you.
And as our next speaker approaches, I do want to recognize Commissioner Justin Jones joined us this morning. He is evaluating the performance of Commissioner Gibson and Commissioner Brown this morning. So say some good things about it.
Chairman Brown, Vice Chair March, my name is Nate Peterson, and I have an opportunity to say something I haven't been able to say for you. I've been before you before, but I was always before you as the proposed general manager for the RTC paratransit services, and now I'm honored, almost humbled to say I am the general manager for NV Transportation, and we're 4 days into our second week, and it's been an amazing journey so far. And I just want to echo a little bit what Don Johnson, the general manager for the fixed route, said a little bit earlier on our collective commitment to safety, not only for our passengers, but for our employees. And it's, you know, safety is not a bumper sticker, it's not a poster, it's not something you can put on a wall and expect people to do it. It's something we need to eat, breathe, and sleep. Those of us who have been doing this a long time. And I've known Don, oh man, a long time. I replaced Don 25 years ago in Tucson, Arizona, and he and I have kind of followed each other around the West. And so I look forward to the challenges, and the challenges we have on paratransit are very different than the challenges on fixed route. But at the end, the way we solve everything is through a lens of safety, and that's how we focus everything. Our decisions are based on that. And I'd also like to thank MJ Maynard for her staff and her commitment with her staff. And I just want to segue into our transition a little bit. Like I said, we're 4 days in, and the RTC staff was absolutely amazing. Francis and Dan and Antoinette and Julio and Ray and Randy, and I'm going to miss some people, Judy and Willie and Stephanie and Keith. Amazing, amazing people. I've been through lots of transitions. I've never been through one where the agency was so supportive and cooperative, and the answer was never no. It was always, how can we work that? How can we make it happen? And I just want to say thank you very, very much, and very much looking forward to the next 7 years here with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board? Thank you all for your patience this morning. This meeting is adjourned.